After I dropped my wife off at the airport for her business trip, my 8-year-old son whispered, "Dad, we cannot go home." I heard Mom planning something bad for us, so we hid 10 minutes later. I froze when I saw a car pull up to my driveway that made my blood run cold. My name is Isaiah Jefferson, but my friends call me Ike. I am 75 years old, and I have spent my entire life building things. I started as a bricklayer in the scorching sun and built a construction empire from the ground up with nothing but sweat and calloused hands. I know how to spot a weak foundation in a skyscraper, but I was too blind to see the cracks in my own home. I was a wealthy man, a powerful man, but standing there at the airport terminal watching my beautiful 35-year-old wife Camilla walk away, I was just a fool. The morning had started with the usual chaotic energy of a travel day. Camilla was flying to Miami for what she called a vital business conference for her interior design firm, a firm I had fully funded, of course. She looked stunning in a white linen suit, her blonde hair perfectly styled, the picture of elegance and success. But her eyes were cold. They were always cold lately, like blue glass that you could not see behind. I hauled her 3 heavy suitcases out of the trunk of my SUV, my back aching slightly, a reminder of my age and the hard labor of my youth. She did not offer to help. She just checked her reflection in the side mirror and tapped away on her phone. When I finished stacking the bags on the curb, she finally looked at me. There was no warmth, no affection, just a look of mild annoyance that I was taking too long. "Well, Ike," she said, checking her expensive watch, "don't just stand there. I have a plane to catch." I leaned in to kiss her cheek, but she turned her head so my lips barely grazed her jawline. It was a rejection I had grown used to over the last year. "Have a safe trip, Camilla," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Call us when you land." She scoffed, a small, sharp sound that cut deep. "I will be busy, Ike. Don't wait up for my call. And listen to me carefully. Make sure you take your heart medication tonight. The heavy dose. You looked pale this morning, and we wouldn't want you having an accident while I am away, would we?" She patted my cheek. Not like a wife touches a husband, but like a master pats an obedient old dog. "Take your pills, old man," she whispered before turning on her heel and marching into the terminal without looking back once. I stood there for a moment, feeling the exhaust fumes of the airport buses and the heavy weight of sadness in my chest. I knew people whispered about us. The wealthy older black man and the young trophy wife. They said she was with me for the money. I had always defended her, telling myself she saw the man inside, not just the bank account. But lately that belief was getting harder to hold on to. I got back into the driver's seat. My son Leo was in the back booster seat. Leo was my miracle, the son I had late in life, the only good thing that had come from this marriage. He was 8 years old, sharp as a tack and usually full of energy. But today he was silent. He was staring out the window, his small hands gripping the seatbelt strap so tight his knuckles were lighter than his skin. "Ready to go, champ?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. "We can get pizza on the way home." Leo did not answer. He just shook his head, his eyes wide and terrified. I pulled out into the traffic, merging onto the highway that led back to our estate in the quiet hills. The silence in the car was heavy. It was not the comfortable silence of a father and son. It was the suffocating silence of fear. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a tear roll down Leo's cheek. "Leo, what is wrong?" I asked, my voice softening. "Do you miss Mom already?" He shook his head again, more violently this time. Then he leaned forward as far as the seatbelt would allow and whispered as if there were hidden microphones in the car. "Dad, please don't go home." I frowned, glancing at him in the mirror. "What are you talking about, son? We have to go home. It is getting late." "No." "Dad, you don't understand," Leo said, his voice trembling. "We can't go there. It is not safe." I chuckled nervously, thinking it was just an 8-year-old's imagination, maybe a nightmare he had watched on TV. "Leo, there is nothing to be afraid of. The house has a security system. We are safe." "You are not safe, Dad," Leo said. And this time he was almost shouting. I heard her. I heard Mom. I eased my foot off the gas pedal, moving into the slow lane. Heard her say, "What, Leo?" Last night, Leo said, his voice dropping back to a terrified whisper. I was thirsty, so I got up to get water. Mom was in the bathroom downstairs. She had the water running, but she was on the phone. She was talking to Uncle Jax. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. Jax! That name made my jaw clench. He was Camilla's personal trainer, a towering wall of muscle with tattoos up his neck and a smile that looked like a shark's. I paid him $200 an hour to train her at our home gym. I never liked the way he looked at my house or at my wife. What did she say to Jack's Leo? She said the flight is the perfect cover. Leo recited the words with a chilling memory. She said I will be in Miami so no one will suspect me. She said tonight is the old man's last night. The car swerved slightly before I corrected it. My heart hammered against my ribs, a erratic rhythm that had nothing to do with my age. Old man, that was what she called me. That was exactly what she called me at the airport. Leo, are you sure that is what she said? Yes, Dad. Leo was crying now. She said, make sure it looks like a robbery. Hit him hard. And then she laughed, Dad. She laughed like a witch. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical explanation, trying to deny the horror that was unfolding. Maybe she was talking about a movie. Maybe I was misunderstanding. I did not want to believe that the woman I slept next to, the mother of my child, was plotting my murder. Leo, maybe you just heard part of a joke or something I said, but my voice lacked conviction. No, Dad, look. Leo unbuckled his seatbelt, which I usually would have scolded him for, but I was too frozen to speak. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver object. He reached over the console and dropped it into my hand. I found this in her purse yesterday when she was packing. Leo sniffled. She dropped it on the carpet and didn't see it. I picked it up. I looked down at the object in my palm, and the air left my lungs. It was a key. But not just any key. It was an old tarnished silver key with a specific notch cut into the head. It was the master key to the back service entrance of our kitchen, the door that led from the garden directly into the pantry. I had lost this key 2 months ago. I had looked everywhere for it. I had even asked Camilla if she had seen it, and she had looked me in the eye and said, "No, Ike, you are getting forgetful in your old age. You probably threw it out." But here it was, in her purse, and she was supposed to be in Miami. Why would she need the back door key to our house if she was thousands of miles away? Why would she hide it from me? The pieces of the puzzle slammed together in my mind, forming a picture so ugly I wanted to vomit. The coldness, the sudden trip, the insistence that I take my heavy medication which would make me sleep like the dead. The phone call Leo heard. And Jax the trainer who owed money all over town. They were not just having an affair. They were going to kill me. Tonight. I looked at the road ahead. The exit for our neighborhood was just a mile away. If I took that exit, I was driving into a tomb. If I went home, I would likely never walk out again. Dad Leo's voice brought me back. Please believe me. I looked at my son, my brave little boy, who had carried this terrifying secret. I reached back and squeezed his knee. I believe you, Leo. I believe you. I jerked the steering wheel to the left, crossing 3 lanes of traffic horns blaring around us. I did not take the exit toward the hills. I stayed on the highway heading south toward the gritty industrial part of the city where I had grown up. Where are we going, Dad? Leo asked, wiping his eyes. We are going to verify this, Leo, I said, my voice hard and cold, the voice of the man who used to negotiate million-dollar contracts with steel unions. But we need a different car. If they are watching us, they know this SUV. I drove for 20 minutes until we reached a small run-down house with a chain-link fence. It belonged to Marcus, my oldest friend. Marcus was a retired police sergeant, a man who had seen the worst of humanity and survived. I parked in his driveway and banged on the door. Marcus opened it, holding a half-eaten sandwich, his eyes widening when he saw me. "Ike," he said, "you look like you have seen a ghost." "Maybe I have, Marcus," I said. "I need a favor, a big one. I need your truck, the old Ford with the camper shell, and I need to leave my SUV in your garage with the door closed." Marcus looked at me, then down at Leo's tear-streaked face. He didn't ask why. That was the thing about Marcus. He knew when to talk and when to act. He reached into his pocket and tossed me a set of keys. "The tank is full," he said. "Do you need my piece?" He meant his gun. I paused. I was a law-abiding citizen. I had never held a gun in anger. But tonight the rules had changed. "No," I said. "Not yet. I just need to see. I need to be sure." We switched vehicles. Marcus's truck smelled of old oil and tobacco, a smell that reminded me of my father. It was a good smell, an honest smell. I put Leo in the passenger seat and threw a dark blanket over us so we would not be easily seen. We drove back toward my neighborhood. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns and gated driveways. It was a beautiful place, a place where bad things were not supposed to happen. I parked the truck 2 streets away from my house on a side road that had a view of my driveway through a gap in the hedges. It was a spot I used to park in when the house was being built to watch the contractors work. We waited. The sky turned purple, then black. The streetlights flickered on. My house sat there dark and silent, a mansion that suddenly looked like a monster's mouth waiting to swallow me whole. "Dad," Leo whispered, "I am scared." I put my arm around him. "I know, son, but I am right here. Nothing is going to hurt you." 9 o'clock passed, then 9:30. I was starting to doubt myself. Maybe I was crazy, maybe Leo had misunderstood. Maybe I was just a paranoid old man who couldn't believe a beautiful woman loved him. But then headlights cut through the darkness. A car turned onto my street. It wasn't a taxi. It wasn't a delivery driver. It was a black muscle car, loud and aggressive. I recognized it immediately. It belonged to Jax. He pulled up right in front of my house. He didn't park in the driveway, he parked on the street under the shadow of the big oak tree. He stepped out. He was wearing dark clothes, a hoodie pulled up over his head. My breath caught in my throat. He walked up the driveway, not to the front door, but around the side, toward the kitchen, toward the back door. He did not break a window. He did not force the lock. He stopped at the door, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a key. A spare key. He opened the door and slipped inside like a shadow. "See, Dad?" Leo whispered, his voice shaking. He used the key. I felt a rage so hot it almost blinded me. But the show was not over. 10 minutes later, another vehicle approached. It was a yellow taxi. It stopped at the curb. The back door opened. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a trench coat and a large hat and sunglasses despite it being night. She looked around nervously, checking the street. Then she paid the driver and walked quickly up the driveway. She did not use the front door either. She went around the back. As she passed under the security light, the motion sensor triggered, and for a split second her face was illuminated. It was Camilla. She wasn't in Miami. She wasn't at a conference. She was here sneaking into our home with her lover while she thought I was asleep in my bed, drugged and helpless. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The betrayal was absolute. The woman I had worshipped, the woman I had given everything to, had come back to kill me. I looked at Leo. He was staring at the house, tears streaming down his face again. "Dad," he said, "they are inside." "Yes, they are." "Leo," I said, my voice low and dangerous. I reached for the door handle of the truck. "Stay here, Leo. Lock the doors. Do not open them for anyone but me." "Where are you going, Dad?" "I am going to catch a rat," I said. I slipped out of the truck into the cool night air. I was 75 years old, but tonight I felt the strength of my youth returning, fueled by a fire of vengeance. I moved through the shadows of the neighbor's yard, approaching my own house from the blind spot of the cameras. I wasn't going to call the police yet. The police would take too long, and the police might just arrest them. No, I wanted more than an arrest. I wanted to look them in the eyes. I wanted them to know that the old man they thought was weak and stupid was about to bring their whole world crashing down. I crept up to the living room window where I had installed one-way glass years ago for privacy. I pressed my ear against the pane. I could hear them. "Is he asleep?" I heard Jax's gruff voice. "He should be." Camilla's voice answered, cold and impatient. "He took the pills. I watched him swallow them this morning. Go upstairs, Jax. Make it quick. Use the bat. I don't want blood on the carpet if we can help it." I stood there in the dark, my fists clenched, my heart turning to stone. They were not just thieves. They were butchers. But the bedroom upstairs was empty, and the hunter was about to become the hunted. I took a deep breath and moved toward the back door. It was time to go home. The silence inside Marcus's old truck was heavy and smelled of stale tobacco and rust. It was 9 o'clock at night, and the streetlights had just flickered on, casting long orange shadows across the manicured lawns of my neighborhood. From where we were parked 2 streets away, I had a clear line of sight to my own driveway through a gap in the neighbor's hedges. I adjusted the binoculars, pressing them against my eyes until the plastic dug into my skin. Beside me, Leo was shivering under the dark wool blanket I had thrown over him. He was not cold. He was terrified. I reached out and rested my large, calloused hand on his shoulder, trying to transfer some of my strength to him. But the truth was, my own hands were trembling. Not from fear, but from a rage so cold it felt like ice water in my veins. We sat there like thieves in the night, watching the house I had built with my own money, the home I thought was my sanctuary. It looked different from the outside looking in. It looked like a fortress that had been breached. The windows were dark. To anyone passing by, it looked like the old man inside had gone to sleep early, just like he was supposed to, just like his wife had told him to. Dad Leo whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the distant highway. "Do you think they are coming?" I did not answer immediately. I kept the binoculars trained on the street. I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to tell him that this was all a mistake, that his mother was in Miami at a conference, and that we were just two paranoid fools sitting in a borrowed truck. But the key in my pocket felt heavy, like a stone. The key Leo had found. The key that was supposed to be lost. "Just wait, son," I said, my voice raspy. "We just have to wait." And then we saw it. It was not a thief sneaking through the bushes. It was not a shadowy figure breaking a window. It was a car, a black muscle car with tinted windows and chrome rims that gleamed under the street lamp. I knew that car. I had seen it parked in the gym parking lot when I went to pick Camilla up from her training sessions. It belonged to Jax. The car did not slow down and circle the block to check for witnesses. It did not park down the street. It pulled right up to the curb in front of my house, bold as brass. The engine cut, and for a moment there was silence. Then the driver's door opened. Jax stepped out. Even from this distance and in the dim light, I could see the arrogance in his stride. He was a big man, younger than me by 30 years, with the kind of artificial muscles that come from steroids and vanity. He wore a dark hoodie, but he didn't pull the hood up. He didn't care who saw him. He thought the only person who could stop him was asleep in the master bedroom, heavily sedated by heart medication. I watched through the lenses as he walked up the driveway. He didn't go to the back. He didn't look for a hidden spare key under a rock. He walked straight to the front door, my front door, the door I had carved from solid mahogany imported from Brazil. He reached into his pocket. I held my breath. He pulled out a key. It glinted silver in the porch light. He slid it into the lock, turned it with a casual flick of his wrist, and opened the door. He walked into my home as if he owned it, as if he were the master of the house coming home after a long day. "See," Dad Leo whimpered beside me. "He has the key." I lowered the binoculars, my stomach churning with acid. "You were right, Leo. You were right about everything." The betrayal was physical. It felt like a punch to the gut. That key was my security. It was the symbol of my protection over my family, and Camilla had given it to him. She had given access to our sanctuary to her lover, to my executioner. "Why did he go in the front?" Dad Leo asked. "Because he thinks he has nothing to fear." I said, my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. "He thinks he has permission." We sat there in the dark watching the house. A light flickered on in the hallway, then went out. Jax was moving through the house. He was probably heading to the kitchen first to check the back door, or maybe he was going straight upstairs. The thought made me reach for the door handle, ready to sprint across the lawns and confront him. But I stopped. Wait. Another vehicle was approaching. It was 15 minutes past 9. A yellow taxicab turned onto the street, driving slowly, scanning the house numbers. It slowed down and pulled up right behind Jax's car. I frowned. Who would be coming here in a taxi? The back door of the cab opened. A leg stepped out, clad in a high-heeled boot. Then a figure emerged. It was a woman. She was wearing a long, beige trench coat belted tight at the waist and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed her face. She wore large, dark sunglasses even though it was pitch black outside. She looked like a character from a bad spy movie, but there was something familiar about the way she moved, something about the tilt of her head as she paid the driver through the window. The taxi drove away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk alone. She stood there for a moment, looking up at the house. She looked at the dark windows of the second floor where my bedroom was. Then she took off the hat and shook her hair out. Even in the darkness, that blonde hair shone like a beacon. It was Camilla. I felt the air leave my lungs in a rush. Leo gasped beside me. "Mom," he whispered. "But Mom is in Miami." "No, son," I said, my voice sounding dead to my own ears. "Mom is not in Miami. Mom is right here." She walked up the driveway, her heels clicking on the pavement. She didn't look like a woman returning from a business trip. She didn't have her suitcases. She just had a large purse slung over her shoulder. She walked with a purpose, with a cold determination that I had never seen in her before. She reached the front door. It was unlocked. Jax must have left it open for her. She pushed it open and stepped inside, closing it softly behind her. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place with a sickening clarity. The business trip, the rush to the airport, the cold goodbye. It was all a lie, a meticulously crafted lie to create the perfect alibi. If I died tonight, if I was found beaten to death in my bed tomorrow morning, Camilla would be hundreds of miles away in Miami. Or at least that is what the flight manifest would say. She must have flown out and flown right back under a different name, or maybe she never got on the plane at all. She had created a window of time where she didn't exist, where she could be a ghost in her own home. She wasn't just having an affair. She wasn't just stealing my money. She was here to supervise. She was here to make sure the job was done right. She wanted to see me die. I stared at the closed front door, imagining what was happening inside. My wife and her lover standing in my foyer discussing how to kill me. They were probably laughing. They were probably kissing, thinking they had won, thinking they were the smartest people in the world. They thought I was upstairs. They thought I was a helpless old man dreaming his last dreams. Dad Leo tugged on my sleeve, breaking my trance. "What are they doing?" "They are setting the stage, Leo," I said. "They are getting ready to perform a play, but the audience isn't in their seats." I looked at my son. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a trauma no 8-year-old should ever have to experience. He had just watched his mother walk into a house to kill his father. That wound would never heal, and for that alone I would make them pay. I felt a change come over me. The sadness, the shock, the disbelief, it all evaporated. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't Isaiah, the loving husband, anymore. I wasn't Ike, the retired old man. I was the man who had survived poverty, racism, and ruthless competitors to build an empire. I was the man who knew how to lay a trap. "We are not staying in the truck, Leo," I said. Leo grabbed my arm. "No, Dad. Don't go in there. They will hurt you." "They can't hurt me if they don't know I am there," I said. "I need to hear them, Leo. I need to know exactly what they are planning. I need evidence." I reached under the seat of Marcus's truck and pulled out a heavy tire iron. It wasn't a gun, but in my hands it felt like Judgment Day. "I am going to get closer," I told Leo. "I am going to the side of the house. I need you to stay here. Lock the doors. If you see me wave my hand, you run to the neighbor's house and you call the police. Do you understand?" Leo nodded, tears spilling over his cheeks again. "I understand, Dad." I kissed his forehead. "You are a brave boy, Leo. Braver than any man I know." I opened the truck door and slipped out into the night. The air was cool, but I was sweating. I moved low, crouching behind the hedges, using the shadows as my shield. I crossed the street, my eyes fixed on the house. It looked peaceful. It looked normal. But inside, a nightmare was unfolding. I crept up the driveway, staying on the grass to avoid the sound of footsteps. I moved toward the living room window on the side of the house. I had installed that window myself years ago. It was high-quality soundproof glass, but there was a ventilation strip at the bottom that I knew was slightly loose. If I could get close enough, I could hear them. I reached the wall of the house. I pressed my back against the bricks, feeling the rough texture through my shirt. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a slow, heavy drumbeat. Thump, thump, thump. I slid along the wall until I was under the window. I slowly raised my head, peering through the crack in the blinds. The living room was dimly lit by the hallway light. I saw shadows moving. I saw a silhouette pacing back and forth. It was Camilla. She had taken off her trench coat. She was wearing black tight clothes like a cat burglar. I pressed my ear against the ventilation strip. The voices were faint but clear enough. "Is he asleep?" Jax's voice. Rough, impatient. He should be Camilla's voice. Cold, calculating. I gave him the double dose in his coffee this morning, and the dinner was laced, too. He should be out cold. "Go upstairs," she commanded. "Do it now, Jax. I want this over with." "What about the boy?" Jax asked. My heart stopped. "Leo," Camilla said, and her voice didn't even waver. "If he wakes up, give him the juice. The one in the purple bottle. It will keep him asleep until tomorrow. We will deal with him later. Deal with him later." She wasn't just planning to kill me. She was going to drug our son and then deal with him. The monster she had become was unrecognizable. "Go," she hissed. "Make it look like a break-in. Smash the window on your way out. And Jax, yeah, make sure he doesn't suffer. Not because I care, but because it is cleaner. One hit. You got it, babe. I heard heavy footsteps moving toward the stairs. Jax was going up to my bedroom. He was going up to kill a pillow dummy. I crouched there in the darkness, gripping the tire iron until my knuckles turned white. They were walking into a trap, but they didn't know it yet. But now I knew something else. I knew they were dangerous beyond measure, and I knew that I couldn't just watch anymore. Jax was going upstairs. Camilla was downstairs alone. It was time to introduce myself. I didn't go to the front door. I moved silently toward the back, toward the kitchen door. The door that opened with the key Jax had stolen. The door that I had a duplicate key for right in my pocket. I was going into the lion's den. And I was going to tear it down from the inside. My back was pressed hard against the cold brick of the house I had built brick by brick 40 years ago. The smell of jasmine from the garden I planted for Camilla filled the air, a sickly sweet contrast to the horror unfolding inside. I told Leo to lock the truck door and not to open it for anyone but me. Seeing his terrified face looking through the window broke my heart, but I had to leave him. I had to know. I crept through the side garden, my boots sinking into the soft mulch. I knew every inch of this property. I knew where the floorboards creaked and where the shadows were deepest. I moved toward the living room window. It was a large pane of one-way glass I had installed for privacy, but I knew a secret about it. The ventilation strip at the bottom had never been sealed correctly. It was a small construction flaw I had meant to fix for years, but tonight that flaw was my lifeline. I slid down until I was crouching in the dirt, my ear pressed against the metal vent. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I was afraid they would hear it inside. Thump, thump, thump. Is the old man asleep? The voice was rough and deep. It was Jax. I could visualize him standing in my living room, his dirty boots on my Persian rug. He should be out cold. The second voice made my blood freeze. It was Camilla, but it wasn't the voice of the wife who had kissed me goodbye at the airport. It was cold, flat, and dripping with malice. I put enough sleeping pills in that casserole to knock out a horse, she said. It was the meat stew he likes. I left it in the fridge with a note. I knew he would warm it up the second I left. He is too lazy to cook for himself. The air left my lungs in a violent rush. I had to clamp a hand over my mouth to stop a gasp. The casserole. I remembered the note on the fridge. I made your favorite Ike. Enjoy dinner. I had opened the fridge when we got home from the airport. I had reached for that dish. I had almost put it in the microwave. But Leo had tugged on my sleeve, his eyes big and pleading, asking for pizza. He wanted pepperoni pizza from the place on 4th Street. If I had been a strict father, if I had forced him to eat the home-cooked meal his mother left, we would both be dead right now. Or worse, comatose and waiting to be slaughtered. She hadn't just tried to poison me. She had left a loaded gun on the table, knowing our 8-year-old son might pull the trigger. She was willing to sacrifice Leo to get to my money. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I almost threw up in the bushes. The woman I loved was a monster. So, what is the plan? Jax asked, his voice echoing slightly. Simple, Camilla replied. Go upstairs. He is in the master bedroom. He should be deep in a coma by now, but don't take chances. Use the bat. The bat. My old baseball bat signed by Hank Aaron. The one I kept behind the bedroom door for protection. Make it look like a struggle, she hissed. Smash his head in. Make sure he is gone, Jax. Then we toss the place. We open the safe. We break the back window. When the police come tomorrow, it will look like a burglary gone wrong. A tragedy. The poor old rich man killed for his watch. And you, Jax asked. I am in Miami, remember? She laughed, a low, cruel sound. I have my flight ticket. I have the hotel check-in. I am miles away. I will come home tomorrow crying my eyes out. I will play the grieving widow perfectly. I was a model Jax. I know how to pose. I listened to the sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I imagined her face, the face I had adored, now twisted into a mask of greed. All right, Jax said. Let's get this over with. I want that money, Camilla. You promised me 50-50. You will get your money, Camilla said. Just kill him. Go. I heard the heavy thud of boots moving toward the staircase. I raised my head slowly, peering through the crack in the blinds. I saw him. Jax. He was wearing black gloves. In his hand he held my baseball bat. He gripped it tightly, testing the weight, swinging it slightly. He wasn't hesitant. He wasn't scared. He looked excited. He started to climb the stairs. 1 step, 2 steps. He was going to my bedroom. He was going to walk up to the lump under the covers, which was just pillows I had arranged this morning out of habit. But he thought it was me. He thought he was going to crush my skull while I slept. I watched him disappear onto the landing. Camilla stood in the living room alone. She walked over to the my liquor cabinet, and poured herself a drink. She took a sip of my expensive scotch, waiting for the sound of my death. I crouched there in the darkness, the tire iron from the truck heavy in my hand. I realized then that Isaiah the builder was dead. The man who believed in second chances was dead. The man who tried to buy love with kindness was dead. In his place was something else. Something hard and cold, like the steel beams of the skyscrapers I used to build. They wanted a burglary. They wanted a violent intruder. I looked at the back door, the one Jax had left unlocked. Well, I thought, gripping the iron bar. If they want to break in, I will give them a break-in. But this robber knows exactly where the bodies are buried. Jax was upstairs swinging a bat at a ghost. Camilla was downstairs drinking my scotch, celebrating a murder that hadn't happened. And I was at the back door turning the handle. The game was over. It was time for the reckoning. The sound of heavy boots on the hardwood floor above my head was the loudest thing in the world. I was crouching in the dirt outside the kitchen window, pressing my ear against the cold glass like a ghost trying to haunt his own house. But the real haunting was happening upstairs. Jax was moving with a purpose. I could hear the creak of the floorboards on the landing, the specific groan of the third step that I had been meaning to fix for 5 years. He was right outside the master bedroom door. My heart was a jackhammer in my chest. I wasn't breathing. I couldn't breathe. I was listening to the sound of my own execution. I heard the bedroom door fly open. It slammed against the wall with a violence that vibrated through the frame of the house. Then came the sound that will stay with me until my dying day. The whoosh of a baseball bat cutting through the air, and then the impact. Thud. It was a wet, heavy sound. The sound of wood hitting the down comforter, the pillows, the mattress. It was the sound of what should have been my skull shattering. Thud. 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 He hit the bed 3 times. 3 strikes to make sure the old man was dead. 3 strikes to earn his payday. 3 strikes to steal my life, my money, and my son's future. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears leaking out. I felt a phantom pain in my head, as if the blows had actually landed. The brutality of it was overwhelming. They didn't just want me dead, they wanted me obliterated. But then the rhythm changed. The hitting stopped. There was a moment of silence, a silence that was heavier and more terrifying than the violence. It was the silence of confusion. And then a roar of pure, unadulterated rage tore through the ceiling. "You lying witch!" It was Jax. His voice was no longer a whisper. It was a scream that shook the walls. "He is not here. The bed is empty." I heard the sound of the bat being thrown across the room. It smashed into something, probably the antique lamp on the nightstand, followed by the sound of breaking glass. "What do you mean he is not there?" That was Camilla's voice coming from the living room just a few feet away from where I was hiding. Her voice was shrill, panicked. It lacked the cold calculation of a moment ago. I stood up slowly, peering through the crack in the blinds again. I saw Camilla freeze. She dropped her glass of scotch. It hit the Persian rug with a dull thud, spilling amber liquid like blood across the intricate pattern. "He is gone, Camilla." Jax came thundering down the stairs. I saw him burst into the living room. His face was red, his veins bulging in his neck. He looked like a wild animal that had been trapped. He was holding the bat again, gripping it so hard his knuckles were white. He stormed up to Camilla and grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her violently. "You said he took the pills. You said he was in a coma. You said this would be easy." I saw the fear in Camilla's eyes. For the first time since I met her, I saw genuine terror. She wasn't afraid for me. She was afraid of him. She was afraid of the monster she had let into our house. I saw him take them, she stammered, her hands trembling as she pushed him away. I watched him swallow them, Jax. He was barely awake when I left. He has to be here. "Well, he isn't." Jax spat. "The bed is made. The pillows are fluffed. Nobody has slept in that bed tonight." He turned and kicked the coffee table, sending my art books flying. "Where is he, Camilla? If he is not here, that means he knows. That means we are walked into a trap." "No." Camilla shook her head frantically, her blonde hair flying around her face. "He can't know. He is stupid, Jax. He is just a senile old man. He trusts me. He worships me." "Then where is he?" Jax screamed right in her face. Camilla spun around, her eyes darting around the room looking for answers in the shadows. "Search the house," she ordered, her voice gaining a hysterical edge. "He must be here. Maybe he fell. Maybe he passed out in the bathroom. Or the study. He spends all his time in that damn study." They separated. Jax ran toward the kitchen. Camilla ran toward the study. I ducked lower beneath the window, pressing myself into the bushes. I heard Jax tearing through the kitchen. I heard him opening the pantry door, slamming cabinets. He was looking for a body. He was looking for a victim. I held my breath. He was just on the other side of the wall. If he looked out the window, if he turned on the outside light, he would see me. I was 75 years old, armed with a tire iron against a steroid-fueled giant with a baseball bat. The kitchen door rattled. He was checking the lock he had opened with the stolen key. He shouted from the kitchen. "Clear. Kitchen is clear." Camilla yelled from the study. "He is not in here. The safe is still locked." They met back in the living room. I peeked through the blinds again. They were both breathing hard, sweating. The confidence was gone. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the primal fear of the hunter who realizes the prey has vanished. "Where could he go?" Jax asked, pacing back and forth like a caged tiger. "I don't know," Camilla whispered. She was biting her fingernails, a nasty habit she only did when she was losing control. "Check the garage," Jax said. "If his car is gone, we have a problem." Camilla's face lit up with a sudden realization. "The garage," she gasped. "Of course." She ran to the window, the front window that looked out onto the driveway. "His car is here," she shouted. "The Bentley is here. And the SUV. Both cars are in the garage, Jax." She turned back to him, a manic smile twisting her lips. "He didn't leave. He can't leave. He never walks anywhere. His knees are bad. He takes the car to go to the mailbox. If the cars are here, he is here." She was using my own habits against me. She was using my age and my physical limitations to build a logic that was flawed. She didn't know about Marcus. She didn't know about the old Ford truck parked 2 streets away. She didn't know that desperation could make an old man walk through fire, let alone down the street. "He must be hiding," Jack said, his eyes narrowing. "He heard us come in. The old rat is hiding in a closet somewhere, shaking in his pajamas." "Find him," Camilla hissed. "Find him and finish it. We can still make this work. We just say he surprised a burglar and got killed in the struggle. It still works, Jax. Just find him." They started tearing the house apart. I heard furniture being overturned. I heard closet doors being ripped off their hinges. They were moving room by room, systematically destroying the home I had built. I needed to move. I needed to get back to the truck, back to Leo. I had heard enough. I had witnessed the intent. I knew everything I needed to know. But as I turned to crawl away through the mulch, my pocket vibrated. It was a long, aggressive vibration against my thigh. I froze. It was my phone. I had forgotten to turn it off completely. I had just silenced the ringer, but the vibration was still on. I reached into my pocket, my hands shaking. I pulled out the phone. The screen lit up in the darkness, illuminating my face like a ghost story. It was Camilla calling. She was standing in the middle of my living room, holding her phone to her ear, her eyes scanning the ceiling, scanning the walls. She was calling me to hear where the ring came from. She was using the phone as a sonar to locate her victim. I stared at the screen, her name flashing. Wife. The irony was bitter enough to choke on. I needed to turn it off. I needed to kill the power before it vibrated again. I pressed the power button on the side. I held it down. But my phone was old. I wasn't good with technology. I didn't know that when you turn off this specific model, it makes a sound. A loud electronic descending chime. Be-do-oop! The sound cut through the quiet night air like a gunshot. It wasn't loud enough to wake the neighborhood, but in the silence of the garden just outside the living room window, it sounded like a siren. I saw Camilla's head snap toward the window. I saw Jack stop mid-stride, his bat raised. They both looked directly at the wall I was hiding behind. "Did you hear that?" Camilla whispered, and I could hear her voice through the glass because she was standing right next to it now. "That was a phone," Jack said. "That was a power-down sound. It came from outside." Camilla said, her eyes wide, staring at the blinds, staring at the tiny gap where I had been peeking. "He is outside, Jax." I didn't wait. I didn't look again. I scrambled backward on my hands and knees, ignoring the pain in my joints, ignoring the noise I was making in the bushes. "Get him!" Jax roared. I heard the sound of the front door being thrown open. I heard the heavy thud of boots hitting the porch. "There is the old man. I see him." Jax's voice was close. Too close. I scrambled to my feet. I wasn't Isaiah the businessman anymore. I wasn't the loving father. I was a rabbit running from a wolf. I sprinted toward the back gate toward the alleyway that led to the next street. I heard Jax crashing through the garden behind me. He was younger, he was faster, he had a baseball bat, and he had the intent to kill. I pushed through the wooden gate, forgetting to latch it behind me. I ran into the darkness, my lungs burning, my heart screaming. Run, old man, I told myself. Run for your life. Run for Leo. Because if he catches you, you won't just die. You will disappear. I ran. I ran until the air in my lungs felt like broken glass and the muscles in my legs burned with the fire of 75 years of gravity fighting back. I burst through the back gate of the alleyway, my boots skidding on the loose gravel. I didn't look back. I didn't need to look back to know that a man 30 years younger than me holding a baseball bat was tearing through the darkness behind me. I could hear his heavy breathing. I could hear the crunch of his boots on the pavement. He was close. Too close. I reached the old Ford truck parked under the shadow of the oak tree. The engine was cold, but the hope inside was hot. I fumbled for the handle. Locked. Leo had listened. He had locked the doors just like I told him. "Leo, open up," I hissed, slamming my hand against the metal. "It is me. Open the door, son." The lock clicked. I threw the door open and scrambled into the driver's seat, my chest heaving, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I jammed the key into the ignition. "Turn over. Please turn over." The old engine groaned. It wheezed. It sputtered. "Come on, you piece of junk," I growled, twisting the key again. Behind us in the rearview mirror, I saw a figure emerge from the alleyway. It was Jax. He stood under the halo of the street lamp, looking left, then right. He was panting, the bat hanging loosely at his side. He looked like a demon hunting for a lost soul. The engine roared to life with a loud backfire that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet neighborhood. Jax's head snapped toward us. He saw the truck. He saw the taillights flare red. He started sprinting toward us, raising the bat over his head. I slammed my foot onto the gas pedal. The tires screeched against the asphalt, burning rubber as the heavy truck lurched forward. I didn't turn on the headlights. I drove in the dark, using the moonlight and my memory of these streets to guide me. I watched in the mirror as Jax shrank into the distance, a small, angry shadow fading into the night. He threw the bat at the truck in frustration, but it clattered harmlessly onto the road behind us. We were safe. For now. I didn't slow down. I drove like a man possessed, weaving through the side streets, avoiding the main boulevards where the traffic cameras might pick up the license plate. I needed to get away. Far away. I needed to get out of the world I had built and into the shadows where I could hide. Dad, Leo whispered from the passenger seat. His voice was small, broken. "Is he gone?" "He is gone. Leo," I said, my voice raspy. "We lost him." I reached over and squeezed his hand, but he didn't squeeze back. He was trembling so violently the seatbelt was vibrating against his chest. He was in shock. He had just seen his mother and her lover hunting his father like an animal. That is not something a boy recovers from in 10 minutes. I drove for an hour. I drove away from the hills, away from the manicured lawns and the gated communities. I drove toward the edge of the city where the neon lights flickered and the pavement was cracked. I drove to the places where people went when they didn't want to be found. I pulled into the parking lot of the Starlight Motel. It was a single-story building with peeling blue paint and a sign that buzzed with a dying fluorescent hum. It was the kind of place where questions were not asked and cash was the only currency that mattered. "Stay here," I told Leo. "Keep your head down." I walked into the small reception office. The air smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. The clerk was a young man with headphones around his neck and a bored expression. He didn't look at my face. He didn't care who I was. "One room," I said, placing $300 on the counter. "Cash. No ID." The clerk looked at the money, then at the register. He slid a key across the scratched countertop. "Room 12 around the back. Checkout is at 11. I took the key. I didn't ask for a receipt. I didn't want a paper trail. I was a ghost now. Isaiah Jefferson, the construction mogul, was dead. Ike the fugitive was all that was left. I drove the truck around the back and parked in front of room 12. I hustled Leo inside and locked the door, engaging the deadbolt and the chain. I closed the curtains tight, checking for any gaps. The room was small and smelled of cheap air freshener, trying to mask the scent of cigarettes. There were 2 double beds with thin floral bedspreads and a flickering television mounted in the corner. It was a long way from the Italian marble floors and silk sheets of my mansion. But right now, it was the most beautiful place in the world because it was safe. I sat Leo down on the edge of the bed. He looked so small in the dim light. He was hugging his knees to his chest, rocking back and forth. "Leo," I said softly, kneeling in front of him. "We are okay. Look at me, son. We are safe." He looked up and his face crumbled. He started to cry. It wasn't the quiet crying of before. It was a deep guttural sobbing that shook his entire body. "Why, Dad," he wailed. "Why does Mom want to kill us? Why does she hate us?" The question hit me harder than Jax's bat ever could have. How do you explain greed to an 8-year-old? How do you explain that the woman who gave birth to him loved money more than she loved his life? I pulled him into my arms and held him tight. I let him cry. I let him soak my shirt with his tears. I rubbed his back, feeling the small bones of his spine, feeling the fragility of his life. "She doesn't hate us, Leo." I lied because the truth was too cruel. She is sick. She is sick in her mind. But that doesn't matter right now. What matters is that she failed. Leo pulled back, sniffling. "But she said she wanted to send me away. She said she didn't want me." I gripped his shoulders. My hands. The hands that had laid bricks and bent steel were gentle but firm. "Listen to me, Leo. Look at your father." He looked at me, his dark eyes swimming with tears. "Do you know where I came from, son? Do you know where I started?" He shook his head. "I started with nothing," I said, my voice low and fierce. "I was born in a shack not much bigger than this room. I didn't have shoes until I was 10. People looked at me and they saw dirt. They saw nothing. They thought because I was poor, because I was black, because I had nothing that I was weak." I stood up and paced the small room, the adrenaline still pumping through my veins. "I built an empire, Leo. I mixed concrete until my hands bled. I carried steel beams on my back until my spine curved. I fought men twice my size and banks that wanted to crush me. I built skyscrapers that touched the clouds. I built the bridges this city drives on." I stopped and pointed at him. "Your mother thinks I am just an old man. She looks at my gray hair and my walking stick and she thinks I am weak. She thinks she can blow me over like a house of straw. She thinks because she is young and beautiful, she has the power." I walked back to him and cupped his face in my hands. But she forgot one thing. She forgot that old concrete is harder than new stone. She forgot that you don't get to be 75 years old in this world by being soft. Leo stopped crying. He was listening. He was looking at me not as a victim, but as his father. "They woke up the wrong man." "Leo," I whispered, "they think they are the hunters, but they don't know that the lion was just sleeping. And now the lion is awake. I am going to teach her a lesson, son. I am going to show her that ginger gets spicier the older it gets. Do you understand me?" Leo nodded slowly. "You are going to get her, Dad." "I am not just going to get her," I said, my eyes burning. "I am going to take everything. I am going to leave her with nothing but the dust." I stood up and went to the window, peeling back the curtain just an inch to check the parking lot. It was empty. We were safe for the night. But the night would end, and when the sun came up I needed to be ready. I checked my watch. It was 3 a.m. Most people would call the police now. Most people would run to the station, show the key, tell the story, and hope for an arrest. But if I called the police now, what would happen? They would arrest Jax for breaking and entering. They might arrest Camilla for conspiracy. They would get lawyers, expensive lawyers paid for with my money. They would get bail. They would spin a story. They would say I was senile paranoid, that I misunderstood. And maybe they would get away with it. Or maybe they would go to jail for a few years and come out still dangerous, still hungry. No. That wasn't enough. I didn't want justice. I wanted annihilation. I wanted to strip them of everything they held dear. I wanted to take the money, the reputation, the freedom. I wanted to crush them so completely that they would never be able to crawl out of the hole I was about to dig. I needed a weapon, a legal weapon. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I turned it on. It buzzed instantly with missed calls from Camilla. I ignored them. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name. Marcus, not Marcus the cop, Marcus the shark. Marcus was my personal attorney, my oldest confidant in the business world. He was a man who knew where all the bodies were buried because he had helped me dig the graves for my competitors, legally speaking. He was ruthless, brilliant, and loyal only to the check I signed. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times. Then a groggy voice answered. Ike. It is 3 in the morning. Is the building on fire? Wake up, Marcus. I said, my voice steady and cold. The building isn't on fire. The whole world is on fire. Ike, what is going on? I need you to open the vault, Marcus. I need the prenup. The one we drafted 10 years ago, the one she never read properly because she was too busy counting the zeros on the engagement ring. There was a pause, the rustle of sheets. Marcus was waking up. The infidelity clause. The malice clause. Everything, Marcus. I want everything. And I need you to freeze the accounts, not tomorrow. Now. I want the assets transferred to the trust. The trust we set up for Leo. Ike, you sound dangerous. I am dangerous, Marcus. I am the most dangerous thing walking the earth right now. A man with nothing to lose and $50 million to spend on revenge. Tell me what happened. They tried to kill me, Marcus. Tonight. Camilla and her boyfriend. They broke into the house. They had a bat. They were going to beat me to death in my sleep. Silence on the other end. A heavy, stunned silence. Are you safe? I am safe. But they think I am running. They think I am scared. Ike, call the police. No police, I snapped. Not yet. I want to catch them in the act. I want to catch them with their hands in the jar. I want to catch them trying to steal the money after they think I am dead. I want undeniable proof. I want to destroy them, Marcus. I heard Marcus take a deep breath. He knew me. He knew that tone. He knew there was no arguing with me when I was like this. Okay, Ike, he said, his voice shifting from friend to lawyer. Okay. If we do this, we do it right. We need to secure the assets first. If she thinks you are dead or missing, she will try to access the life insurance and the joint accounts immediately. Exactly, I said. Let her try. Let her put her name on the paper. Let her commit the fraud. I will get the team up, Marcus said. We will have the injunctions ready by sunrise. We will monitor the accounts. Good. And Marcus, yeah. Get the private security team ready. The ones we used for the union strikes back in the 90s. I might need some heavy lifters. Ike, don't do anything stupid. I am done being stupid, Marcus. I spent 10 years being stupid. Tonight, I got smart. I hung up the phone. I looked over at Leo. He had fallen asleep on the bed, exhausted by the trauma still wrapped in the dark wool blanket. He looked peaceful. I walked over and sat in the chair by the door, the tire iron resting across my knees. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to watch. I was going to wait. The sun would be up in a few hours, and when it rose, the old man would be gone, and the architect of their destruction would take his place. The sun sliced through the gap in the cheap motel curtains like a laser beam, burning a line of dust motes dancing in the stale air. It was morning. The kind of morning where the world wakes up fresh, but you wake up feeling like you have lived 1,000 years in a single night. I sat in the hard plastic chair by the door, my joints stiff, my neck craning with the ache of sleeping upright holding a tire iron. I looked over at the bed. Leo was still asleep, curled into a tight ball under the scratchy floral bedspread. He twitched in his sleep, his little face scrunching up, probably dreaming of monsters. He didn't know yet that the monsters were real, and they wore the faces of the people we were supposed to love. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. It felt heavy cold, like a loaded gun. I had turned it off hours ago, right after I called Marcus. I knew what was waiting for me inside that black screen. I knew the digital storm that was about to break. I pressed the power button. The screen glowed to life, the white apple appearing like an innocent eye. Then the vibration started. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It was a continuous angry spasm against my palm. The notifications cascaded down the screen in a waterfall of panic. 47 missed calls, 32 text messages, 14 voicemails. They were all from her. Camilla, where are you? Pick up. I am worried. Call me. Ike, please answer. I read them with a detached curiosity, like an archaeologist reading hieroglyphs on a tomb. They looked like the messages of a frantic, loving wife. They looked like concern. But I knew the code. I knew the translation. Why aren't you dead? Where are you hiding? Why is the bed empty? She wasn't worried about my safety. She was terrified of my absence. My absence meant failure. My absence meant the plan had gone off the rails. My absence meant I might know. The phone buzzed again in my hand. Incoming call. Wife. The picture I had set for her contact popped up. It was a photo from our honeymoon in Italy 10 years ago. She was smiling, holding a gelato, the sun catching her blonde hair. I looked at that face, the face I had worshipped, and I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just a cold hollowness where my heart used to be. I let it ring 3 times. I cleared my throat. I needed to sound like Ike the husband, not Ike the fugitive. I needed to sound like the old man she thought she knew, the soft retired builder who forgot his keys and took afternoon naps. I needed to put on the performance of a lifetime. I slid my thumb across the screen. "Hello, Ike. Oh my God, Ike." Her voice exploded through the speaker, shrill and breathless. It was a masterpiece of acting. She sounded on the verge of tears, hyperventilating with relief. "Ike, where are you? I have been calling all night. I was about to call the police. I was so scared. I thought you had a heart attack. I thought you fell down the stairs. Why didn't you answer?" I leaned back in the creaky chair, stretching my legs. I looked at the peeling paint on the ceiling. I imagined her wherever she really was. She wasn't in Miami. She was probably sitting in her car parked a few blocks from our house, or maybe she was back at the house now pretending to have just arrived early from her trip. She was likely pacing, chewing her lip, her eyes wild with rage while her voice dripped with honey. "I am sorry, honey," I said slowly, making my voice sound thick and groggy. "I didn't mean to scare you. Where are you, Ike? Tell me right now." I took a deep breath. This was the pivot. This was the moment I turned the tables. "I am at the lake," I said. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a sharp, sudden vacuum of sound. It wasn't the silence of relief. It was the silence of a computer trying to recalculate a broken algorithm. "The lake," she repeated, her voice flat. "Yeah, Lake Oconee," I said, lying as easily as I used to lay bricks. "You know how the house gets sometimes. Last night after you left, it just felt stuffy, suffocating. I couldn't breathe in there, Camilla. The air felt heavy." I paused, letting that sink in, letting her wonder if I meant the air was heavy with her betrayal. So I grabbed Leo and we just drove. I decided we needed some fresh air. "We are camping." "Camping," she screeched. Her mask slipped for a fraction of a second. "Ike, you are 75 years old. You have a bad back. You hate camping. You haven't gone camping in 20 years. "I know," I chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. "That is what makes it an adventure, right?" I just felt impulsive. I wanted to show Leo the stars. We slept in the back of the truck. It was refreshing. In the back of the truck, she was processing this. She was trying to visualize it. The old man she planned to bludgeon to death in his silk sheets was sleeping in a truck bed under the stars. It didn't make sense to her. It didn't fit the profile of the victim she had constructed in her mind. "But Ike," she stammered, trying to regain control of the narrative. "You didn't tell me. You left the house empty. You didn't set the alarm." "Oh, I locked up tight," I said. "Don't worry about the house. The house is fine. It is just a building, Camilla. We are what matters, right?" She made a sound that was half sob, half growl. "I was so worried, Ike. I am sitting here in Miami and I feel so helpless. I couldn't sleep all night. I had a bad feeling, a really bad feeling. I bet you did," I thought. "You had a bad feeling because your hitman called you and told you the bird had flown the coop." "I am sorry to ruin your trip, honey," I said, my voice dripping with false apology. "I forgot my phone charger in the rush. It died last night. I just plugged it in now. That is why I missed your calls." "You are at the lake?" she asked again, needing to confirm the location, needing to know where to send Jax next. "Which campsite? I am going to fly home. I am coming to get you." "This is ridiculous." No, don't do that," I said quickly. "Stay in Miami. You have your conference. It is important for your career. We are fine. We are having a great time. Leo is fishing right now." He wasn't fishing. He was sleeping in a motel room that smelled like despair, but she didn't need to know that. "Ike, I don't want you out there alone. What if you have an episode? What if you need your pills?" "I have my pills," I said. "I took the heavy dose you told me to. Slept like a baby. Best sleep I have had in years." I heard her breathing on the other end. It was ragged. She was furious. She was absolutely livid. She had set the perfect trap and I had simply walked out the side door to go look at the moon. It was insulting to her intellect. "So how is Miami?" I asked, switching the subject abruptly. "What Miami?" I said. "The weather, the conference. Are you having fun? Is the hotel nice?" I could feel her squirming through the phone. She had to pivot from the worried wife to the professional businesswoman instantly. She had to lie about a place she wasn't in while standing in the wreckage of her failed murder plot. It is fine," she stammered. "It is hot, very humid. The hotel is okay. The conference is boring. Just a lot of meetings." "Is it sunny?" I asked, twisting the knife. "Yes, very sunny," she said. "That is funny," I said casually. "I was watching the Weather Channel this morning while Leo was getting bait. They said there is a hurricane warning over Miami. Said it is pouring rain. Torrential downpours." Silence. Absolute dead silence. I had caught her. It was a small trap, a petty trap, but it was satisfying. "Oh, well," she stumbled, her voice rising an octave. "It is raining now. Just started. It was sunny earlier. You know Florida weather. It changes so fast." "Right," I said. "Like the wind." "Ike," she said, and her tone hardened. "Stop playing games. Come home. Come home right now." "I don't like this. I am not playing games, Camilla," I said, my voice dropping the cheerful facade for just a second, becoming the voice of the man who used to fire incompetent foremen on the spot. "I am just living my life. I will come home when I am ready. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. We might drive up to the mountains. Who knows? The mountains. Another location. Keep her guessing. Keep her chasing ghosts. You can't just wander around the state with our son," she snapped. "He is my son too, Camilla, and he is safe, safer than he has ever been." "What does that mean?" she asked sharply. "It means the fresh air is good for him," I said, retreating back to the mask. "Listen, honey, I have to go. The fish are biting and Leo just caught a big one. I have to help him reel it in." "Ike, wait, do not hang up. Enjoy the conference." "Camilla," I said, "don't work too hard." And, "Hey." What she breathed. "Thanks for the casserole. It was delicious." I hung up. I stared at the black screen of the phone. I hadn't eaten the casserole. I had dumped it in the trash at the motel, but telling her I ate it would drive her mad. She would be wondering why I wasn't dead. She would be wondering if the poison was expired or if Jax had messed up the dosage. She would be doubting everything. Fear, confusion, paranoia. Those were the seeds I was planting. I wanted them to grow in her mind like weeds. I wanted her to sweat. I wanted her to look over her shoulder. I looked at Leo. He was stirring, stretching his arms. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Who was that, Dad?" he asked sleepily. "That was your mother," I said, putting the phone back in my pocket. "Is she coming?" he asked, his eyes widening with that same fear from last night. "No, son," I said, standing up and walking over to the window, peeling back the curtain to look at the parking lot. The sun was fully up now, revealing the cracked pavement and the weeds growing through the concrete. It was an ugly view, but to me it looked like freedom. "She isn't coming. She thinks we are fishing." I turned back to him. "Wash your face, Leo. We have a busy day. We aren't going to the lake. We have appointments." "Appointments?" Leo asked, confused. "Yes," I said. "We are going to see a man about some money, and then we are going to see a man about a lock." I walked into the small bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. The eyes staring back were old, bloodshot, lined with wrinkles, but they were sharp. They were the eyes of Isaiah Jefferson, the man who came from nothing and built everything. Camilla thought she was playing chess with a pigeon. She thought she could just knock over the pieces and declare victory. She didn't know she was sitting across from a grandmaster. The phone buzzed again, a text from Camilla. "I am catching the next flight home. Be there by tonight, or I call the police." I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. She was threatening me with the police. The audacity was breathtaking. Let her come. Let her run back to the empty house. Let her find the cold bed. By the time she got back, the locks would be changed, the accounts would be frozen, and the trap would be set. I picked up the room key. "Let's go, Leo," I said. "Time to go to work." Marcus's office smelled of mahogany polish and expensive coffee, the kind of smell that screams power and stability. It was a stark contrast to the mildew and stale smoke of the Starlight Motel where I had spent the night clutching a tire iron. I sat in the leather chair opposite his massive oak desk, watching him type furiously on his computer. Leo was on the sofa in the corner, coloring in a sketchbook Marcus's secretary had found for him, trying to pretend his world hadn't just imploded. Marcus didn't look like a cop anymore. He looked like the expensive shark of a lawyer he had become. His suit was crisp, his eyes were sharp behind his reading glasses, but I could see the tension in his jaw. He had been digging for 2 hours since we arrived. "Ike," he said without looking up, "you need to come see this." I stood up, my knees popping a reminder of the night spent on the run. I walked around the desk and looked at the screen. It was a digital scan of a withdrawal slip from one of my smaller investment accounts, a venture capital fund I had set up years ago as a rainy day cushion. "Look at the signature," Marcus said, pointing a manicured finger at the bottom line. I squinted. It read, Isaiah Jefferson. It looked like my signature. The loop of the J, the sharp cross of the T. But it was slightly off. The slant was too aggressive. The pressure on the pen was uneven. "That is not me," I said, my voice low. "I haven't touched that account in 5 years, I know," Marcus said, "because the IP address for the digital authorization came from a device named Camilla's iPad." He clicked next. Another document. Another withdrawal. This one from a mutual fund. $10,000 here, $15,000 there. It was a slow bleed. A death by 1,000 cuts. "She has been draining you," Ike, Marcus said, his voice heavy with disgust. "For the last 8 months. Little bits at a time, just under the reporting limit so the bank wouldn't flag it. She has been forging your signature on the transfer requests." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. 8 months. For 8 months, I had been sleeping next to a thief. I had been buying her jewelry, taking her to dinner while she was picking my pockets while I slept. How much, I asked. "Total so far," Marcus sighed. "About $300,000. It was a lot of money to most people, but to me it was the principle. It was the betrayal. But $300,000 wasn't enough to kill for. Not for a woman like Camilla who liked $5,000 handbags. Why kill me for $300,000, I asked. If she divorced me, she would get more than that in the settlement, even with the prenup. This doesn't make sense, Marcus. Murder is risky. You don't risk life in prison for pocket change." Marcus spun his chair around to face me. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "You are right, Ike. You don't kill for the loose change. You kill for the jackpot." He reached into a manila folder on his desk and pulled out a thick document. He slid it across the polished wood. "Do you remember signing this?" he asked. I looked at the cover page. Apex Life Insurance. Policy number 8842. I frowned. I had life insurance. I had a standard policy I took out 20 years ago. But this was different. This was new. I opened it. The date was 6 months ago. The coverage amount made my breath hitch in my throat. $5 million. Double indemnity for accidental death. I stared at the numbers. $5 million. And then I remembered, 6 months ago. It was a Tuesday evening. Camilla had cooked steak. She was wearing a silk dress, the blue one I loved. She had poured me a glass of wine and sat on my lap, running her fingers through my gray hair. "Ike," she had purred, "we need to think about the future. You are getting older and I worry. If something happens to you, I don't want the business to swallow everything. We need a safety net, just for peace of mind." She had been so sweet, so loving. She had brought the papers to me later that night when I was tired and a little tipsy from the wine. "Just sign here, baby," she had said. "It is just standard paperwork for the estate planning." I had signed it. I had signed my own death warrant because I wanted to make her happy. Because I trusted her. "She played me, Marcus," I whispered, the shame burning my face. "She played me like a damn fiddle." "She increased the policy 6 months ago," Marcus said, his voice hard. "And look at the beneficiary." I didn't need to look. I knew. Sole beneficiary, Camilla Jefferson. "If you die of a heart attack, she gets $5 million, Marcus said. "If you die of a burglary gone wrong or an accident, she gets 10. That is the jackpot, Ike. That is why she needs you dead. $10 million. That was the price on my head. That was the value of my life to the woman I loved. But why now, I asked, pacing the office. Why tonight? Why the rush? If she has been planning this for 6 months, why not wait? Why risk a break-in when she could have just poisoned me quietly over time?" "Because she is on a clock," Marcus said. "And the clock is ticking loud." He turned back to his computer. "I ran a background check on your boy Jax, the personal trainer, the muscle." I stopped pacing. Jax. The man who had swung a bat at my pillows. What about him? His real name is Jackson Miller, Marcus said, reading from the screen. He has a rap sheet as long as my arm. Assault, extortion, possession. But that is not the interesting part. The interesting part is his financial situation. Marcus pulled up a credit report. It was a sea of red ink. He is broke Ike. He owes everyone. Credit cards, car loans. But those are the polite debts. I made a few calls to some of my old contacts in Vice. Marcus looked at me, his eyes grim. Jax has a gambling problem, a big one. He is into the underground sports books for $200,000, and the people he owes, they don't send collection letters. They send guys with hammers. $200,000. He has a deadline, Marcus continued. He was given until the end of the month to pay up, or they are going to break his legs. Maybe worse. The end of the month was in 3 days. The picture was complete now. It was hideous, but it was complete. Camilla wasn't just killing me for greed, she was killing me to save her lover. She had promised him my money. She had promised him that if he helped her kill the old man, he would get his debts paid, and they would live happily ever after on my $10 million. She is buying him, I realized. She is buying his life with mine. I felt a cold fury settle over me. It was different from the rage I felt last night. Last night was hot and chaotic. This was cold. This was structural. This was the kind of anger that builds empires and destroys them. She thinks I am just an old man. I said, my voice steady. She thinks I am a wallet with a pulse. I looked at the documents on the desk. The forged signatures, the insurance policy, the evidence of a conspiracy so vile it made me sick. She leveraged everything Marcus said. She forged your signature to co-sign Jax's latest loan extension. If he doesn't pay, they come after you. Or rather, your estate. So if I live, I am liable for his debt, I said. And if I die, she uses my death money to pay it off. Exactly, Marcus said. It is a perfect circle, unless you break it. I looked over at Leo. He was looking at us now, sensing the shift in the room. He looked scared, but he also looked to me for answers. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city skyline. I had built 3 of those buildings. I knew how to handle pressure. I knew how to handle weight. Freeze it all, Marcus, I said without turning around. What? Freeze everything. Every account, every asset. The trust, the investments, the checking accounts. Put a lock on them so tight that not even a penny can squeeze out. Ike, if I do that, she will know Marcus warned. She will get a notification the second her card is declined. Good, I said, turning back to face him. I want her to know. I want her to feel the squeeze. I want her to stand at a checkout counter buying coffee and realize she can't even afford the cup. But the insurance policy, Marcus asked, tapping the document. We can't just cancel it overnight. It takes time. We don't need to cancel it, I said, a dangerous idea forming in my mind. We just need to change the beneficiary. Marcus raised an eyebrow. To whom? To the trust, I said. To Leo. Effective immediately. I walked back to the desk and leaned over it, my hands flat on the polished wood. And I want you to draft a new will, Marcus, right now. I want a clause that says, if I die under suspicious circumstances, any suspicious circumstances, not a single dime goes to Camilla. Not the house, not the cars, not the insurance, nothing. It all goes to Leo, and she gets nothing but the debt she signed for. Marcus smiled. A shark smile. That is nuclear Ike. If she kills you, she inherits bankruptcy. Exactly, I said. I want her to know that my death is the most expensive thing she will ever buy. But we aren't done, I added. This is just the paperwork. Now I need to deal with the rats. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was almost noon. Camilla was supposedly in Miami. Jax was probably hiding out waiting for her instructions. They were panicked. They were desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. She called me this morning, I told Marcus. She thinks I'm camping at the lake. She thinks she has time to regroup. Marcus nodded slowly. So we have a window. We have a window, I agreed, and I am going to use it to close the shutters on her fingers. I picked up the forged withdrawal slip. You said Jax owes money to bad people, right? Very bad people, Marcus confirmed. Do you know who they are? Marcus hesitated. I have an idea. A guy named Sal runs the book in that district. Call Sal, I said. Ike Marcus looked alarmed. You don't want to get involved with Sal? I am not getting involved, I said. I just want to send a message. Tell Sal that his money is coming. Tell him that Jackson Miller is coming into a big inheritance very soon. Tell him that Jax is going to pay him double if he just waits a few more days. Marcus looked confused. Why would you do that? Why buy him time? Because I want Jax to feel safe, I said. I want him to think the plan is working. I want him to relax. And when he relaxes, he will get sloppy. And when he gets sloppy, I will be there to catch him. And Camilla. Camilla is coming home, I said. She told me she is flying back. She is coming back to an empty house, to a husband who isn't there, and to a bank account that reads 0. I straightened my jacket. She wants a tragedy, Marcus. She wants a drama. Well, I am going to give her one, but she isn't the director anymore. I looked at Leo. Pack up, son. We are done here. Where are we going, Dad? Leo asked, clutching his sketchbook. We are going shopping, I said. We need some cameras, and we need some microphones. I looked back at Marcus. Keep digging, Marcus. Find everything, every text, every email, every receipt. I want a mountain of evidence so high she can't climb over it. I will, Ike Marcus said. Be careful. I am done being careful, Marcus. I am being precise. I walked out of the office holding my son's hand. I had the truth now. I knew the numbers. I knew the motive. $5 million and a gambling debt. That was the price of my life. It was a cheap price for a man like me. And I was about to show them just how expensive the cost of betrayal really was. 2 days. I let her sweat for 48 hours. I let her sit in that empty house or wherever she was hiding, wondering where I was, wondering why I wasn't dead, wondering if I knew. Silence is a powerful weapon. It makes the guilty mind race, it makes them imagine the worst, and it makes them sloppy. While she was panicking, I was preparing. I spent those 2 days with Marcus and his team building a fortress of evidence, but now it was time for the final act. I had to go back into the cage with the tiger, but this time I was the one holding the whip. I sent Leo to stay with Marcus's sister, a sweet woman who ran a daycare. He was safe there, surrounded by kids and laughter, far away from the poison of his own home. I couldn't risk him seeing what was about to happen. I couldn't risk him being in the crossfire if things went wrong. I drove the SUV back to the house in the middle of the day. The sun was shining on the manicured lawn, the sprinklers were hissing their rhythmic song. Everything looked perfect. It was the picture of the American dream. But I knew it was just a facade. Inside, the air was stagnant with lies. I parked in the garage next to the empty spot where Camilla's car usually sat. She wasn't back yet. I had timed this perfectly. I had sent her a text an hour ago saying, heading home now. See you there. I wanted to beat her by an hour. I needed that hour. I walked into the house. It smelled of lemon polish and silence. I didn't take off my boots. I walked through the rooms with a heavy bag over my shoulder. In that bag were 6 high-definition micro cameras and 3 long-range microphones. I had bought them from a surveillance shop. Marcus recommended the kind that sells to private investigators and jealous husbands. I went to work. I moved with the speed and precision of the young carpenter I used to be. I installed a camera in the smoke detector in the living room, pointing directly at the sofa. I hid one in the bookshelf in the study, nestled between the spines of legal encyclopedias she never opened. I placed a microphone under the kitchen island where we usually argued about money, but the most important one was in the bedroom. I placed a camera inside the vent of the air conditioning unit, looking down at the bed. It had a perfect view of the pillows where Jax had swung his bat. It had a perfect view of the nightstand where I kept my water. It would see everything. I tested the feeds on my phone. Crystal clear. Audio crisp. I was ready. I sat down in my favorite leather armchair in the living room. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't read a book. I just sat there, my hands resting on my knees, breathing in the silence, waiting for the storm. An hour later, I heard the sound of a car engine, then the slam of a door, then the click of heels on the walkway. The front door opened. Camilla breezed in. She was pulling her rolling suitcase behind her, wearing the same travel clothes she had worn to the airport 5 days ago. She was committed to the bit. She was playing the part of the exhausted business traveler returning from a long trip. She even had a fake airport luggage tag on her bag. She stopped when she saw me. For a split second, her face contorted. It was a flash of pure hatred mixed with fear. She looked at me sitting there alive, breathing, occupying space she wanted to be empty. But then just as quickly, the mask slammed back into place. Ike, she exclaimed, dropping her bag and rushing toward me. Oh, thank God, you are home, she threw her arms around me. I smelled her expensive perfume, but beneath it I smelled something else. The stale scent of cigarettes and nervous sweat. She hadn't been in a luxury hotel in Miami. She had been hiding out probably in some cheap motel or at Jax's apartment waiting for me to resurface. I didn't hug her back. I let my arms hang limp at my sides. I played the part of the tired, confused old man. Hello, Camilla, I croaked. You are back. She pulled away, holding my face in her hands. Her nails dug into my skin slightly. I was so worried about you, she said, her eyes wide and searching. You just disappeared. You went to the lake. You never go to the lake. Why did you do that, Ike? I coughed a dry, rattling cough that shook my chest. I practiced it in the mirror. I don't know, I said, looking away, avoiding her gaze, not out of shame, but to hide the fire in my eyes. I felt strange, Camilla. That night after you left, the house felt haunted. I felt like I was being watched. I couldn't sleep. Her eyes narrowed. Haunted. Watched. She was analyzing every word, wondering if I knew about Jax, wondering if I had seen them. So you just took Leo and left, she asked. In the middle of the night, I felt like I couldn't breathe, I said, rubbing my chest. I thought the fresh air would help, and it did for a while. But the drive back, it was hard. She stepped back, scrutinizing me. She was looking for cracks in my story, but she was also looking at my physical state. You look pale, Ike, she said. You look terrible. I forced a weak smile. Thanks, honey. Just what a man wants to hear. How was Miami? I asked, shifting the focus. Did the conference go well? She didn't even blink. Oh, it was exhausting. She lied, smooth as silk. Seminars all day, networking all night. The weather was awful, just rain, rain, rain. I barely left the hotel. I missed you so much. Lies. All lies. All wow. I knew for a fact it had been sunny in Miami yesterday because I checked. But she didn't know that. She was building her alibi brick by brick, unaware that I had already dynamited the foundation. I missed you too, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. She walked over to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. I watched her on the screen of my phone, which was resting on my lap, hidden by the newspaper. The camera under the island caught her expression when she turned her back to me. She closed her eyes and let out a long, silent scream of frustration. She clenched her fist and hit the counter softly. She was furious that I was alive. She was furious that she had to keep playing this game. She composed herself and turned back around, a bright, fake smile plastered on her face. Well, we are both home now, she said, safe and sound. Where is Leo? He is at a sleepover, I said. Marcus took him. He wanted to play with his cousins. I thought it would be good for him to have some fun. I am not up to handling an 8-year-old right now, Camilla. Good, she said, and I saw the relief wash over her. She didn't want Leo here. Leo was a complication. Leo was a witness. She walked back into the living room. So what now, she asked. Are you hungry? Should I make dinner? The thought of her cooking turned my stomach. No, I said quickly. I am not hungry. I just want to sit here. I paused. It was time to deploy the bait. I leaned forward, gripping the armrests of the chair. I grimaced, squeezing my eyes shut and letting out a sharp groan of pain. Ike, she asked, stepping closer but not rushing. What is it? My chest, I gasped. It feels tight, like a band of iron. I rubbed my left arm, and my arm is tingling. Camilla stood very still. She didn't run to get my pills. She didn't reach for her phone to call 911. She just watched. Her eyes went flat and cold like a shark smelling blood in the water. Is it your heart? She asked softly. I think so. I wheezed. I think I overdid it with the camping, the stress, sleeping in the truck. I am too old for this, Camilla. You were right. I am just a weak old man. I slumped back in the chair, letting my mouth hang open slightly, breathing in shallow, ragged gasps. She took a step closer. She was inspecting me. She was checking to see if this was it, if nature was finally doing the dirty work for her so she wouldn't have to use Jax again. Do you need your medication? She asked. Yes, I whispered. Please. The nitro. It is upstairs. She didn't move. She stood there for 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Ike, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Are you sure you want the medication? Maybe you just need to rest. Maybe you should just close your eyes. I looked at her through my half-closed eyelids. She was practically vibrating with anticipation. She wanted me to die right here in this chair. She wanted my heart to stop so she could inherit $5 million and pay off her lover's gambling debts. Please, Camilla, I begged, playing the part of the helpless victim. It hurts. She sighed, a sound of dramatic inconvenience. All right, she said. I will go get it. Don't move. She turned and walked toward the stairs. She didn't run. She walked slowly, deliberately, taking her time. Every second she wasted was a second closer to my potential death. As she walked up the stairs, I pulled out my phone. I switched the feed to the bedroom camera. I saw her enter the room. She didn't go to the nightstand. She went to the window and looked out, checking the driveway, checking the street, making sure we were alone. Then she walked to the mirror and fixed her hair. She looked at herself and smiled. It was a cruel, triumphant smile. She picked up the pill bottle. She shook it. Then she put it back down. She waited. She was giving it time. She was giving the heart attack time to do its work. I watched her on the tiny screen, my blood boiling. This was the woman I had married. This was the mother of my child. She was standing upstairs waiting for me to die while I sat downstairs watching her wait. It was the coldest thing I had ever seen. After 2 minutes, she picked up the bottle again and started coming down the stairs. I quickly hid the phone. I slumped to the side, my head lolling against the back of the chair. I made my breathing sound wet and difficult. She came into the living room. Here, she said, holding out the bottle but not opening it. Here are your pills, Ike. Can you open it? My hands are wet. She knew my hands were shaking. She knew I was weak. She was taunting me. I reached out my hand, trembling violently. I fumbled with the bottle. I dropped it. It rolled across the floor under the sofa. Oh, clumsy, she tutted. She didn't bend down to pick it up. I guess you will have to wait, she said. I looked up at her. Camilla, I rasped. Help me. She looked down at me, her blue eyes shining with a terrible light. It was hope. Pure dark hope. She was imagining the funeral. She was imagining the reading of the will. She was imagining the life she would have with Jax on my money. You know, Ike, she said softly, crossing her arms. Maybe this is for the best. You are tired, aren't you? You have worked so hard your whole life. Maybe it is time to just let go. She leaned in close, her face inches from mine. Just let go, Ike. Stop fighting. No one is coming to save you. She thought she was whispering to a dying man. She didn't know she was whispering into a microphone that was recording every syllable of her cruelty. She didn't know she was confessing her intent to let me die. I closed my eyes and let out a long, shuddering breath, feigning unconsciousness. I heard her straighten up. I felt her lean over and check my pulse. Her fingers were cold. She waited. Then she pulled away. Finally, she whispered. She walked away from me. She walked into the kitchen. I heard the beep of her phone. She was making a call. Jax, she said, her voice low and urgent. Get over here. I think it is happening. The old man is checking out. No, I didn't have to hit him. His heart gave out. It is perfect. Just get here. We need to stage the scene. She hung up. I opened my eyes. The room was blurry, but my vision was clear. She had called the cavalry. Jax was coming. The trap was baited. The rats were gathering, and I was ready to snap the neck of the trap shut. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the frantic beating of my own heart. I sat at the small breakfast table, my hands resting on the cold granite, trying to stop them from trembling. Leo was sitting across from me, his coloring book open, but he wasn't coloring. He was watching his mother. His eyes were wide and dark, filled with a terror that no 8-year-old should ever have to know. He looked at her like she was a stranger, like she was a monster wearing his mother's skin. Camilla was at the counter, her back to us. I could hear the clinking of a spoon against china. It was a delicate sound, a domestic sound, but tonight it sounded like a funeral bell. She was humming, a soft, tuneless melody that grated on my nerves. She was happy. She thought she had won. She thought the old man was dying and the money was almost hers. She turned around holding a steaming mug. The porcelain was white, delicate, painted with small blue flowers. It looked innocent, but I knew what was inside. Here you go, Ike, she said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that made my stomach turn. This is a special herbal tea I picked up in Miami. The woman at the shop said it is miraculous for heart health. It will help you relax. It will help you sleep. She placed the mug in front of me. Steam curled up, carrying a scent that was heavy and floral, but underneath the flowers there was a chemical tang, a smell like bitter almonds. I looked at the liquid. It was dark murky. "Drink it while it is hot," she urged, touching my shoulder. Her hand felt heavy like a lead weight. "You need to rest, Ike. You have had a hard day." I looked up at her. Her blue eyes were bright, too bright. They were fixed on the mug, waiting. She was eager. She wanted me to drink it down to the dregs. I looked at Leo. He was staring at the cup, his knuckles white as he gripped his crayon. He wanted to scream. He wanted to knock it out of my hand. I could see the panic rising in his chest. I gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible wink. It was a signal we had used 1,000 times before, when we were playing hide and seek or when I was sneaking him an extra cookie before dinner. It meant trust me. It meant I have a plan. Leo blinked. He took a deep breath and looked back down at his book, pretending to color. Good boy. He was learning. He was strong. I lifted the mug. It was warm in my hands. "Thank you, Camilla," I said, my voice raspy and weak. "You are so good to me, even after I worried you." "Of course I am good to you," she said, stroking my hair. "I am your wife, Ike. I only want what is best for you. Now drink. It will make the pain go away." I brought the cup to my lips. I tilted it. I let the liquid touch my tongue just for a second. It tasted foul, bitter and metallic. I pretended to take a sip. I made a swallowing sound in my throat. "It is strong," I said, making a face. "It is herbal," she said quickly. "It is supposed to taste earthy. That means it is working. Do you want some sugar? I can get you some honey." "Yes," I said, setting the cup down. "Honey would be good. It is very bitter. I will get it," she said. She turned around to walk to the pantry, which was on the other side of the kitchen. It was only 5 steps. 5 steps where her back would be turned. 5 steps to save my life. The second she turned, I moved. I didn't move like an old man. I moved with the speed of a man who had caught rivets on high steel beams. There was a large potted ficus tree in the corner of the breakfast nook right next to my chair. It was a plant Camilla had bought years ago and then neglected. I grabbed the mug and dumped the contents into the soil of the plant. The dark liquid disappeared instantly into the dry dirt. I put the empty mug back on the table just as Camilla turned around with a plastic bear of honey. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. "I managed to get most of it down," I said, coughing slightly. "I don't think I need the honey. It is already settling." She stopped. She looked at the empty cup. Then she looked at me. A smile spread across her face. A genuine smile this time, but it was the smile of a predator who sees the trap snap shut. "Good boy," she said, putting the honey down. "That is a very good boy, Ike. You will feel better in no time." She picked up the cup and took it to the sink. She rinsed it out immediately, washing away the evidence. She was thorough. She was careful. "Go upstairs, Ike," she said, drying her hands. "Go lie down. The medicine works faster if you are resting." I nodded. I stood up slowly, gripping the edge of the table for support. I let my legs tremble. I let my shoulders slump. "Come say good night to your father, Leo," she said to our son. Leo jumped up. He ran to me and wrapped his arms around my waist, burying his face in my stomach. "Good night, Dad," he whispered fiercely. "Good night, son," I whispered back. "I love you. Stay in your room. Don't come out, no matter what you hear." I pulled away from him. I looked at Camilla. "I am going to lay down," I said. "I feel tired already." "It is the tea," she said. "Go on. I will be up in a minute to check on you." I walked out of the kitchen. I climbed the stairs, my hand heavy on the banister. Every step was a performance. I dragged my feet. I stumbled on the landing. I went into the master bedroom. The room where I had slept for 10 years. The room where Jax had swung his bat just last night. I sat on the edge of the bed. I kicked off my boots. I lay back on the pillows. Now the real acting began. I waited 5 minutes. Then I started to groan. It started low, a rumble in my chest. Then it got louder. I clutched my stomach. I writhed on the bed, kicking the sheets. "Oh God," I yelled out, my voice thin and reedy. "My stomach. Camilla. It burns." I heard her footsteps on the stairs. They weren't hurried. They were calm, measured. She appeared in the doorway. She was leaning against the frame, her arms crossed over her chest. She wasn't rushing to my side. She wasn't calling 911. She was watching. "Camilla." I gasped, reaching a hand out toward her. "Help me. Something is wrong. My heart. It is beating too fast." She just stared. Her face was a mask of cold indifference. She looked at her watch, a diamond-encrusted Rolex I had bought her for our 5th anniversary. "It takes about 20 minutes usually," she said softly as if she were reciting a recipe. "The dizziness comes first, then the cramps, then the heart stops. It is supposed to be painless, but maybe the internet was wrong. She wasn't even pretending anymore. There was no one else in the room, no witnesses, just the dying old man and his widow. Why I wheezed, squeezing my eyes shut, tears of fake pain and real sorrow leaking out. Why, Camilla? I gave you everything. You gave me a cage." She spat, her voice suddenly venomous. "You gave me a golden cage, Ike. I am 35 years old. I am beautiful. I am vibrant. And I am stuck here changing your diapers and listening to your old war stories about the construction business. I am bored, Ike. I am so bored." She walked into the room, but she stopped at the foot of the bed. "And I met someone," she said, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Someone who makes me feel alive. Someone who is strong, young. But he has debts, Ike. Bad debts. And you? You have so much money, more money than you need. You are just sitting on it like a dragon. It is selfish, really." She checked her watch again. "Jax is on his way," she said. "He is 5 minutes out. He was going to finish the job last night, but you disappeared. You got lucky. But luck runs out." She looked at me writhing on the bed. "If the poison doesn't finish you, he will. We are going to open that safe, Ike. We are going to take the cash. We are going to take the bonds. And tomorrow I will be the grieving widow. I will cry at your funeral. I will look beautiful in black." I let out a long, shuddering groan and went limp. My hand fell off the side of the bed. I stopped moving. I held my breath. Camilla took a step closer. She tilted her head, observing me like a science experiment. Finally, she whispered. She didn't check my pulse. She didn't try CPR. She turned her back on me. She walked to the window and looked out at the driveway, waiting for her lover's headlights. She thought it was over. She thought I was a corpse. But I was watching her through the slit of my eyelids. I was breathing shallow, silent breaths. My hand was hanging off the bed, inches from the hidden button I had taped to the side of the nightstand earlier today. The silent alarm button connected to the security system Marcus had installed. But I didn't press it yet. Not yet. I needed Jax. I needed them both in the room. I needed them to think they had won. I heard the rumble of an engine outside. The black muscle car. "He is here," Camilla said to the empty room. She turned back to look at my body one last time. "Goodbye, old man," she said. "Thanks for the money." She walked out of the room to let him in. I lay there, my heart pounding against the mattress. The adrenaline was washing away the fatigue. I wasn't sick. I wasn't dying. I was fully awake. And I was ready to rise from the dead. I lay on the bed, my body a heavy stone statue carved from silence and discipline. I had spent 50 years on construction sites learning how to be still, how to watch, how to wait for the concrete to set and the steel to cool, but this was the hardest stillness of my life. My chest was a fortress, holding my breath in shallow, imperceptible sips of air. My eyes were closed, but behind the lids my mind was a blazing inferno of awareness. I was not dead. I was not even asleep. I was a coiled spring waiting for the moment to snap. The front door slammed downstairs. It was a heavy sound, the sound of an invasion. Heavy boots thudded against the hardwood floor, running up the stairs, taking them two at a time. The vibration traveled through the floorboards and up into the bed frame, rattling my teeth. Jax was coming. The hyena had arrived to pick the bones of the lion. I heard Camilla's voice, first sharp and breathless, from the hallway. "In here, Jax. Hurry!" Jax burst into the room. I felt his presence before I heard him. He brought a smell with him, a mixture of stale tobacco, cheap musk, and the metallic tang of adrenaline. He stopped at the foot of the bed. I could feel his eyes on me. I could feel the heat of his body, the erratic energy of a man who knows he has crossed a line he can never uncross. "Is he done?" Jax asked, his voice rough. "He is gone," Camilla said, and her voice was so cold it could have frozen the air in the room. I checked his pulse. Nothing. The tea worked fast. He didn't even fight it. He just gave up. She was lying, of course. She hadn't checked a pulse she had just assumed. She wanted me dead so badly that she had hallucinated my demise. Jax walked around the side of the bed. I felt the mattress dip as he leaned over me. His hand, rough and calloused, grabbed my jaw. He shook my head side to side. My neck remained loose, my muscles completely relaxed, a trick I learned from a stuntman on a movie set I built in the 80s. Dead as a doornail, Jax grunted, letting my head drop back onto the pillow. He laughed. A short, nervous bark of a laugh. We did it, babe. We actually did it. The old man is history. Camilla laughed too, but hers was high and giddy. I told you, Jax. I told you I could handle it. Now stop staring at the corpse. We have work to do. We need to find the deeds. We need the bearer bonds. I lay there listening to them talk about my life as if it were a garage sale. They didn't cover my face. They didn't show an ounce of respect. They just turned away from the body and focused on the loot. The safe, I heard Jax say. Where is the safe? Behind the painting, Camilla said. The portrait of his mother. God, I hate that painting. It stares at me. I heard the sound of canvas scraping against the wall as they ripped the portrait of my mother down. It hit the floor with a crash. My blood boiled. That painting was 60 years old. It was the only thing I had left of the woman who raised me in a one-room shack. What is the combination? Jax demanded. Camilla rattled off the numbers. Her birthday. Of course. I had made the combination her birthday because I was a sentimental old fool. I had changed the digital code remotely 2 days ago using the app Marcus installed on my phone, but the mechanical dial. The mechanical dial was still the same. I heard the spinning of the tumbler. Left, right, left, click. The heavy steel door swung open. Jackpot, Jax whispered. I heard the rustling of papers. I heard the snapping of rubber bands. They were pulling everything out. The land deeds for the commercial properties downtown, the stock certificates, the cash I kept on hand for emergencies, about $50,000 in crisp hundreds. Look at this, Jax said, his voice trembling with greed. This is the deed to the lake house. And this. Holy smoke, Camilla. These are government bonds. This is millions right here. Put it in the bag, Camilla ordered, her voice sharp with authority. Don't count it now, you idiot. Just bag it. We need to make this look like a robbery. Take the jewelry, too. Take his watch. The Patek Philippe on the nightstand. I felt Jax's hand on my wrist, fumbling with the clasp of my watch. He yanked it off, scratching my skin. Nice watch, old man, he muttered. Too bad you can't tell time in hell. I wanted to open my eyes. I wanted to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until his eyes popped. But I held on. I needed more. I needed the full confession. I needed them to hang themselves with their own words. They ransacked the room. I heard drawers being pulled out and dumped on the floor. I heard my clothes being ripped from the closet. They were staging the scene, making it look like a violent break-in. We need to break the window downstairs, Jax said, panting with exertion. And the back door. We need to make it look like they forced entry. Do that on the way out, Camilla said. First, we secure the bag. And Jax, the insurance policy, did you find the hard copy? Yeah, it is right here, Jax said, rustling a thick envelope. $5 million. Double for accidental. We are rich, babe. We are set for life. They kissed. I heard the wet, smacking sound of their lips. It was the most disgusting sound I had ever heard. My wife kissing my murderer over my dead body. Then the room went quiet for a second. The frenzy of the looting paused. So what now? Jax asked. We got the money. We got the papers. The old man is dead. We trash the place and leave, right? Yes, Camilla said. But there is one loose end. My heart stopped beating for real this time. I knew what was coming. I knew who the loose end was. The kid, Jax said. The boy. Leo. He is in his room, Camilla said. He is asleep. Or he is hiding. It doesn't matter. What are we going to do with him? Jax asked. We can't just leave him here with a dead body. Why not? Camilla replied, her voice devoid of any maternal instinct. It will make the story better. The poor traumatized son finding his father. It will sell the burglary angle. But afterwards, Jax pressed. You are the widow. You get custody. I don't want a kid, Camilla. Especially not his kid. I am not playing daddy to some brat. Camilla sighed, the sound of someone discussing a piece of unwanted furniture. Don't worry, Jax. I have already thought about it. I am not keeping him. I felt a tear leak from my closed eye, sliding hot down my temple into my ear. So what then? Jax asked. I'm going to send him away, Camilla said. There is a military school in Alabama, a cheap one, for troubled youth. I have the brochure in my office. I will tell the social workers he is acting out, that he is violent because of his father's death. They will sign him over in a heartbeat. Military school. Jax laughed. That is cold. Or maybe an orphanage, Camilla mused, tapping her chin. I could hear the click of her nails. State care. Let him be a ward of the state. I don't care, Jax. I really don't care. She paused, and then she said the words that would burn in my soul forever. I don't want to raise him. I never did. Every time I look at him, I see Ike. I see that old black man's face. I want a fresh start, Jax. I want beautiful babies. Blonde babies. Not that. Not that. She called our son that. My hands clenched into fists under the sheet. The rage was no longer cold. It was a nuclear fire. She had crossed the line from criminal to monster. She had insulted my race, she had rejected her own blood, and she had condemned an innocent 8-year-old boy to a life of misery just so she could be free. She didn't know. She didn't know that under the bed directly beneath where she was standing was a small plastic walkie-talkie, a Spider-Man walkie-talkie. And she didn't know that the other unit was in Leo's hand in his bedroom down the hall. I had given it to him before I sent him to his room. I told him, son, if you get scared, you listen. If you hear my voice, you know I am okay. But I need you to be brave. I need you to be a witness. He was listening. He was hearing his mother throw him away like garbage. He was hearing her call him that. The pain he must be feeling was unimaginable, but that pain would be the fuel for his survival. He would know the truth. He would never wonder if his mother loved him. He would know she didn't. And that knowledge, as brutal as it was, would set him free from her. All right, Jax said. Orphanage it is. Let's get out of here. This place gives me the creeps. One more thing, Camilla said. She walked back to the bed. I felt her presence looming over me. Hit him, Jax. What Jax asked. Hit him with the bat, she said. In the head. Just once. To make sure. And to make it look like a struggle. The police need to see blunt force trauma. Poison is too clean. They might investigate poison. But a smashed skull, that is a robbery. I tensed every muscle in my body. This was it, the moment of truth. You want me to hit a dead body? Jax asked, sounding disgusted. Just do it, Camilla snapped. Do it and let's go. I heard Jax shift his weight. I heard the bat whistle through the air as he lifted it. I couldn't wait anymore. If he swung that bat, I was dead. I opened my eyes. Jax was standing over me, the bat raised high, his muscles bunched to deliver a killing blow. Camilla was standing next to him, her arms crossed, a look of impatient expectancy on her face. They looked down, and they saw my eyes, wide open, burning with the fury of 1,000 suns. Jax froze. The bat hovered in the air. His mouth fell open. He looked like he had seen a demon rise from the pit of hell. Camilla screamed. It was a short, sharp sound of pure terror. I didn't speak. I didn't shout. I moved. My hand, which had been hovering over the side of the bed, slammed down onto the silent alarm button I had taped to the nightstand frame. And then I sat up. I sat up like Lazarus rising from the tomb, but Lazarus didn't come back with a tire iron. I pulled the iron bar from under the sheets. Hello, Jax, I said, my voice booming in the sudden silence. The bat fell from Jax's hands. It clattered to the floor, rolling away. He stumbled back, tripping over his own feet. He is alive, Jax stuttered, pointing a shaking finger at me. You said he was dead. Camilla was backing away, her hands over her mouth, her eyes bulging. She was shaking her head violently, denying the reality that was standing in front of her. No, she whispered. No. You drank the tea. I saw you. I stood up from the bed. I stood to my full height of 6'2". I wasn't an old man anymore. I was a mountain. I didn't drink the tea, Camilla, I roared. I watered the plant. I took a step towards them, swinging the tire iron loosely at my side, and I heard everything I said. I heard about the money, I heard about the debts, and I heard what you said about my son. Camilla hit the wall. She was trapped. Jax was looking at the door, looking for a way to run. You called him that, I growled, advancing on her. You called my boy that. Camilla slid down the wall, begging with her hands. Ike, please. I didn't mean it. It was Jax. He made me say it. Liar, Jax screamed, finding his voice. You lying witch. It was your idea, all of it. They started screaming at each other, accusing, blaming, panic, tearing their alliance apart in seconds. But I wasn't listening to them. I was listening to the sound of sirens in the distance. The real police were coming. But before they arrived, I had one more thing to show them. I reached for the remote control on the nightstand. You want a show? I said. I will give you a show. I pressed the button that lowered the projection screen I had installed in the bedroom ceiling years ago. Watch, I commanded. And the screen flickered to life, showing the video feed from the living room camera. The video of them entering the house. The video of them plotting. The party was over. The lights were on. And the roaches had nowhere to hide. The sound of sirens wailing in the distance suddenly cut off. It was abrupt, like a radio being unplugged. Silence slammed back into the room, a heavy, suffocating blanket that made the ringing in my ears even louder. Jax and Camilla froze, their eyes darting to the window. They were expecting flashing blue lights. They were expecting uniforms, badges, and the Miranda rights. They were expecting the law. But I knew better. I knew those sirens were just a recording playing from a loudspeaker in the back of Marcus's car parked down the block. It was sound effects. Theater. What they got instead was chaos. A crash from downstairs shook the entire house. It sounded like the front door had been kicked off its hinges. Then came the heavy thud of boots, not the polite tread of police officers, but the aggressive stomp of an invasion. Voices shouted, but they weren't yelling police or freeze. They were yelling profanities. They were yelling names. Where is he? Where is that lying rat Jax? Jax's face drained of all color, turning a sickly shade of gray. He knew that voice, or he thought he did. He dropped the tire iron he had snatched up from the floor. His hand started shaking so bad he looked like he was having a seizure. "No," he whispered. "No. Not them. Not tonight." 3 men burst into the bedroom. They were huge, dressed in black leather jackets and dark jeans, looking like nightmares that had crawled out of the city's underbelly. They wore ski masks that hid their faces but revealed their cold, dead eyes. They carried baseball bats, and one of them, the biggest one, held a heavy black pistol. They weren't police. They were the wolves Jax had been running from. Or at least that is what I paid them to look like. In reality, they were the best private security team money could buy, men who used to work special ops and now worked for people like me who needed problems solved quietly. Marcus had briefed them perfectly. They were here to play a role, and they were winning Oscars. The leader, a giant of a man who Marcus called Tiny, leveled the gun at Jax. "Found you, Jackie boy," Tiny roared. Jax fell to his knees, his hands raised in surrender. "Please, please, Sal sent you right. Tell Sal I have the money. It is right here. Look." He pointed frantically at the canvas bag stuffed with my cash and deeds. Tiny didn't look at the bag. He walked over and backhanded Jax across the face. The sound was like a pistol crack. Jax sprawled onto the rug, blood trickling from his lip. "Sal is tired of waiting, Jackie," Tiny growled. "He doesn't want your promises. He wants your skin." Camilla screamed. She was pressed against the wall, her expensive travel makeup running down her face in black streaks. She looked from the gunman to me to Jax. She was trying to calculate the odds, trying to find the exit. "Who is this?" Tiny asked, pointing the gun at Camilla. "Is this the sugar mama you told Sal about? The one who is going to pay your tab?" "No!" Camilla shrieked, holding her hands up. "I don't know him. I mean, I know him, but I am not paying anything. I am a victim here." Tiny laughed, a deep rumble that shook the room. He grabbed Camilla by her hair and dragged her into the center of the room, throwing her down next to Jax. "You are with him, you pay for him," Tiny said. "That is how the street works, lady." I stood by the bed, still holding my tire iron, my heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and dark satisfaction. The security team ignored me completely, just as I had instructed. To them, I was part of the furniture, a witness to be dealt with later. This was about Jax. This was about the debt. I watched as my wife, the woman who had shared my bed, who had promised to love me until death do us part, scrambled away from her lover like he was diseased. "Get away from me," she hissed at Jax, kicking at him with her heels. "You brought them here, you idiot. You told them where I live." "I didn't," Jax cried, wiping blood from his mouth. "They must have followed me. Baby, please, you have to help me. Give them the money from the bag." Camilla looked at the bag. Then she looked at the gun in Tiny's hand. "Take it," she yelled at Tiny, pointing at the loot. "Take the money. It is $50,000. Just take it and leave." Tiny walked over to the bag. He kicked it over, spilling the cash and the papers onto the floor. He looked at it with disdain. "50 grand, he scoffed. "You owe Sal 200, Jackie, plus interest. This is a down payment. It is not enough to save your legs," he signaled to the other 2 men. They moved forward, grabbing Jax and Camilla. They produced zip ties. Within seconds, my wife and her lover were bound, hand and foot, kneeling on my bedroom floor like prisoners of war. I stayed silent, watching. I wanted to see how far she would go. I wanted to see what she was really made of when the safety net was gone. Tiny crouched down in front of Jax. He pressed the barrel of the gun against Jax's forehead. "You have two choices," Jackie Tiny said softly. "You pay me the full 200 right now, or I take it out in trade. And since you don't have the cash, I guess I have to take something else." He moved the gun. He pointed it at Camilla. "She is pretty," Tiny said. "Sal likes pretty things. Maybe we take her. Maybe we sell her off to pay your debt. She looks like she is worth a few bucks." Camilla's eyes bulged. She let out a sound, a high-pitched keen of pure terror. She wasn't looking at me for help. She wasn't looking at God. She was looking into the abyss. "No," she screamed, twisting against the zip ties. "No, please. I am not involved. I have money. I have more money." Where Tiny asked. The insurance, she babbled the words tumbling out of her mouth in a torrent of panic. "My husband. He has a policy. $5 million. It is coming. I just need a few days. Please, just wait a few days." Tiny shook his head. "Sal doesn't wait. Sal wants blood tonight." He cocked the gun. The mechanical click echoed in the silent room. "One of you dies tonight," Tiny said. "Either you, Jackie, for being a lying thief, or her for being your collateral. You choose Jackie." Jax looked at Camilla. I saw the calculation in his eyes. I saw the love, if it ever existed, evaporate like mist in the sun. He didn't want to die. He was a coward, a bully, and bullies always fold. Her Jax whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Take her. Kill her. Just let me go." Camilla gasped. She looked at Jax with an expression of absolute betrayal. The man she had killed for. The man she was going to run away with. He had just sold her out to save his own skin. "You bastard," she screamed. "You coward. I did everything for you. I planned everything." Tiny laughed. "Ain't that sweet? Young love." He turned the gun toward Camilla. He pressed it against her temple. "Looks like you are the lucky winner, sweetheart," Tiny said. "Any last words?" This was it. This was the moment. The pressure was maximum. The facade was stripped away. She was staring death in the face. And that is when she broke. Completely and utterly. "Don't kill me!" she shrieked, her voice tearing her throat raw. "Please don't kill me. I am nobody. I am just a girl." She twisted her body, trying to point with her tied hands. She pointed at me. "Kill him," she screamed. "Kill the old man." I stood there, my tire iron hanging loose, looking at my wife. "He is the one with the money," she yelled, her eyes wild and manic. "He is loaded. That is Isaiah Jefferson. He has millions. Millions in the bank. Millions in the safe." She was hyperventilating, selling me out with every breath. "Look at him," she pleaded with the gunman. "He is old. He is going to die soon anyway. He has lived his life. I have my whole life ahead of me. Don't waste a bullet on me. Kill him." She was bargaining. She was trading my life for hers, without a second of hesitation. "He has a safe downstairs," she babbled. "A hidden safe. I can give you the combination. There are diamonds, gold. Just kill him and take it all. I won't say a word. I swear. I will tell the police it was a burglary. I will cover for you. Just kill him." I felt a coldness settle in my chest that was deeper than the grave. I had suspected she was greedy. I had known she was plotting. But hearing her beg a stranger to put a bullet in my head so she could live, it destroyed the last fragment of the man I used to be. The Isaiah who loved her died in that moment. The Ike who built skyscrapers and families turned to dust. All that was left was the judge. Tiny looked at me. I saw the flicker of disgust in his eyes behind the mask. Even he, a man paid to play a villain, was repulsed by her. He looked back at Camilla. "You would trade your husband for your life?" Tiny asked. "Yes," she screamed. "Yes, do it. Do it now. Shoot him." She was looking at me now. Her eyes were pleading, but not for forgiveness. She was pleading with me to die. She was looking at me with pure hatred, wishing I would just stop breathing so she could survive. "I am sorry, Ike," she sobbed, "but it wasn't an apology. It is just business. You understand business, right? You are old. It is my turn." She turned back to Tiny. "Please, just pull the trigger. He is right there. He is standing right there. Why aren't you shooting him?" Tiny lowered the gun. He didn't shoot. He didn't move. The room fell silent. The only sound was Camilla's ragged breathing and Jax's soft weeping. She looked confused. She didn't understand why I wasn't dead yet. She didn't understand why the gangster was looking at me waiting for a signal. Then she saw it. She saw Tiny give me a barely perceptible nod, a nod of respect, a nod of deferral. She looked at me, really looked at me. I wasn't cowering. I wasn't begging. I was standing tall, holding my tire iron like a scepter. My face was calm, my eyes were dry, and slowly the realization began to dawn on her. The horror of the truth began to creep into her eyes, replacing the fear of death. "Ike," she whispered, her voice trembling. Why aren't they shooting you?" I took a step forward. My boots echoed on the floorboards. "Because, Camilla," I said, my voice low and steady, filling the room, "they don't work for Sal." I walked over to Tiny. I reached out and patted him on the shoulder. "Good job, Marcus," I said. Tiny reached up and pulled off his ski mask. It wasn't a stranger. It was the head of my security detail, a man who had worked for me for 20 years. A man named Thomas, but everyone called him Tiny. He looked at Camilla with a sneer. "Mrs. Jefferson," he said, his voice dropping the fake gangster accent. "You are a piece of work." Camilla's mouth fell open. She looked from Thomas to me to the other men who were also pulling off their masks, revealing the faces of the men who guarded my construction sites. This is a trick," she whispered. "No, Camilla," I said, standing over her, looking down at the woman who had just tried to sell my life for hers. "This isn't a trick. This is a business transaction, and you just went bankrupt." I looked at Jax. He was staring at the floor, broken and defeated. "And you, Jackson Miller," I said, "you really do owe Sal money." That part wasn't a lie. "And trust me, Sal is going to be very interested to hear that you tried to rob his favorite contractor." Jax looked up, terror flooding his face again. But for now I continued, turning back to my wife. "We have some legal matters to discuss." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "The prenup, the real one. Remember this?" I asked, holding it up. Camilla stared at the paper, her mind snapping. She started to laugh, a high, broken sound of madness. "You can't do this," she screamed. "You can't trap me. This is kidnapping. This is torture. I will sue you. I will take everything." I leaned down close to her face. "You won't take anything, Camilla, because you just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder in front of 3 witnesses and a high-definition camera." I pointed to the vent where the camera lens glinted. "Smile, honey," I said. "You are on TV." The fight went out of her. She slumped against the wall, defeated, broken, exposed. And then the real sirens started. Not the recording, the real wail of the police cruisers coming up the driveway. I stood up and walked to the window. Blue and red lights flashed against the glass, painting the room in the colors of justice. "Let them in, Thomas," I said. "Let the police in. I think my wife has a statement to make." The screams of my wife begging a stranger to murder me were still echoing off the high-vaulted ceilings when I made my move. Upstairs in the master bedroom, the air was thick with the dust of betrayal. I sat up on the edge of the bed. My joints popped a familiar sound of age that Camilla had mistaken for weakness, but tonight it sounded like the cocking of a gun. I stood up and walked to the full-length mirror. I wasn't wearing pajamas. I wasn't wearing the clothes of a sick man. I was wearing my charcoal 3-piece suit, the one I had worn to ring the bell at the stock exchange 10 years ago. My tie was perfectly knotted. My cufflinks' gold lions gleamed under the recessed lighting. I smoothed the lapels. I looked at the man in the reflection. He wasn't a victim. He was a titan. I picked up the crystal tumbler from the nightstand. It was filled with sparkling apple juice, bubbling and golden-looking for all the world like the finest scotch in my cabinet. I walked to the bedroom door. I opened it. The hinges, which I had oiled myself just yesterday, made no sound. Below me, the living room was a pit of chaos. Jax was sobbing on his knees, a broken man. Camilla was frantic. Her face twisted into a mask of pure survival instinct, pointing a trembling finger toward the ceiling, toward me. "Kill him!" she shrieked, her voice tearing at her throat. "He is the one with the money. He is upstairs. Just go up there and smash his head in. I won't tell anyone, I promise." I walked onto the mezzanine balcony that overlooked the grand foyer. My leather dress shoes clicked rhythmically on the hardwood floor. Click, click, click. The sound cut through her, screaming like a blade. It wasn't a loud noise, but it was a deliberate one. It was the sound of authority. One by one, the heads turned upward. First Thomas, my head of security posing as the gunman, who looked up with a subtle nod of respect. Then Jack's, whose eyes widened until I thought they might pop out of his skull. And finally Camilla. She froze mid-scream. Her mouth hung open, a black hole of silence. Her eyes locked onto me standing there at the top of the stairs, bathed in the light of the crystal chandelier. I didn't look like a man who had been poisoned. I didn't look like a man who was comatose. I looked like the man who owned the building. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my drink, the ice clinking softly against the glass. The sound rang out in the dead silence of the house like a church bell. "Camilla," I said. My voice was deep, steady, and resonated from the chest. It wasn't the raspy whisper I had used to fool her earlier. It was the voice that had commanded construction crews of 500 men. She flinched, as if I had physically slapped her. Her knees buckled, and she slumped onto the Persian rug she had planned to wrap my corpse in. "I am curious," I continued, resting one hand casually on the mahogany railing, looking down at them with the detached interest of a judge viewing the accused. "Who exactly did you just tell these gentlemen to kill?" Camilla's face drained of color so fast she looked like she had been bleached. She shook her head, a violent, jerky motion. "No," she whispered the word, barely escaping her lips. "No, you drank the tea. You were dying. I checked your pulse." "You checked what you wanted to find, my dear," I said, starting to descend the stairs. I walked slowly, 1 step, 2 steps. I wanted her to feel every second of my approach. "You saw a weak old man. You saw a victim. You saw an easy payday." Jack scrambled backward on his knees, crabs walking away from the stairs as if I were the Grim Reaper himself. "Mr. Jefferson," he stammered, blood and snot running down his face. I didn't know. She said you were dead. She said it was done. And you believed her?" I asked, reaching the bottom of the stairs and stepping onto the marble floor of the foyer. "Mistake number 1, son. Never trust a woman who is willing to sell her husband's life for a cleared debt." I walked into the living room. The gangsters parted ways, allowing me to pass, lowering their weapons slightly. I stopped right in front of Camilla. She was looking up at me, her eyes darting from my face to the glass in my hand to the suit I was wearing. Her brain was trying to process the impossibility of what she was seeing. The ghost had walked down the stairs, and he was better dressed than she was. "Ike," she choked out. Are you real?" "I am as real as the prison cell you are going to rot in," I said coldly. I took another sip of my drink, savoring the sweetness of the apple juice and the bitterness of her terror. "You thought you were playing a game, Camilla," I said, leaning down so my face was level with hers. "You thought you were the director of this little play. You wrote the script. You cast the actors. The poisoned husband, the brutal lover, the grieving widow." I gestured around the room with my glass. "But you forgot one thing. I built the theater." This is a trap," she whispered, looking at Thomas, then back at me. "These men, they aren't Sal's men. Sal," I laughed, a dry, harsh sound. "Sal is a 2-bit bookie on the South Side. He doesn't send men in ski masks. He sends a foreclosure notice." I pointed at the large man holding the gun. "That is Thomas. He has been my head of site security for 20 years. He has protected my assets from riot strikes and thieves much smarter than you." Camilla looked at Thomas. He pulled off his ski mask, revealing a stern face she had seen a dozen times at company picnics. "Hello, Mrs. Jefferson," Thomas said, his voice flat. Camilla let out a wail of pure despair. She realized then that there was no negotiation. There was no way out. She hadn't just been caught. She had been played. "You knew," she sobbed, grabbing the hem of my trousers. "You knew the whole time. The trip, the tea, the bat. I knew," I confirmed, pulling my leg away from her touch. "I listened to you plotting my death while I sat in a truck 2 streets away. I watched you poison my drink, and I heard you," my voice dropped an octave, becoming dangerous. "I heard you call our son that." She flinched, shrinking away from the fire in my eyes. "That was the mistake, Camilla. You can try to kill me. I'm an old man. I've lived my life, but when you threaten my boy, when you plan to throw him away like trash..." I straightened up, towering over her. "That is when you stop being my wife and start being my target." Jax was weeping openly now, his face buried in his hands. "Please," he moaned. "I just want to go home." "You are going to a new home, son," I said. "State penitentiary. I hear the gym facilities are excellent." I turned to Thomas. "Open the front door, Thomas. The real police are waiting at the gate. Let's not keep them waiting." Thomas nodded and moved to the door. Camilla stared at me, her eyes hollow. The fight was gone. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was the ruin of a woman who had gambled everything on a pair of dice that were loaded against her from the start. "Ike," she whispered. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not," I said, turning my back on her to pour my drink into the fireplace. "You're just caught." The silence in the room was heavy and thick like the air before a thunderstorm, but I held the remote control in my hand like a detonator. Thomas and his men stood back, their arms crossed their faces, impassive masks of stone, while Jax and Camilla huddled on the floor like shipwrecked survivors on a raft that was slowly sinking. I walked over to the large media console that dominated the south wall of the living room. It was an 80-inch screen, the kind I used to watch football games on with Leo, the kind I used to watch movies on with Camilla back when I thought she loved me. Now it was going to be the canvas for her destruction. I pressed the power button. The screen hummed to life, filling the room with a cold blue light that illuminated the terror in their eyes. "You wanted to be rich, Camilla," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You wanted a life of luxury and excitement. Well, sit back. I have prepared a special feature just for you." I navigated to the folder Marcus had helped me set up remotely. It was labeled simply Evidence. I clicked the first file. The video that appeared on the screen was grainy at first, night vision, green and gray, but the audio was crystal clear. It was from the camera I had hidden in the bookshelf yesterday, the one nestled between the legal encyclopedias. On the screen, the living room appeared. It was empty at first. Then the back door opened. 2 figures crept in. One was large and hulking. The other was slender and moved with a nervous energy. Jax and Camilla watched themselves enter the house on the screen. I saw Camilla flinch as she watched her digital self pull off her mask. "Look at that," I narrated, pointing at the screen with the remote. "Breaking and entering. Conspiracy to commit murder. And look who is leading the way." On the screen, the digital Camilla was whispering. "Is he asleep? He should be." I gave him the double dose. The real Camilla let out a strangled sob. She covered her face with her hands, trying to block out the sight of her own guilt, but the sound was everywhere. The surround sound system I had paid $10,000 for was now broadcasting her crimes in high fidelity. "No," she moaned, rocking back and forth. "Turn it off. Please turn it off." I didn't turn it off. I turned the volume up. On the screen, Jax was asking about the bat. "Use the bat," the digital Camilla hissed. "Smash his head in. Make sure he is gone, Jax." I looked down at the real Jax. He was staring at the screen, his mouth open, his eyes glazed over. He was watching himself agree to murder a man. He was watching his life end frame by frame. "That is premeditation, son," I said to him. "That is life without parole, in Technicolor." I skipped to the next video. This was the one from tonight. The camera under the kitchen island. The screen showed the kitchen bright and cheerful. It showed Camilla standing at the counter humming a tune. It showed her taking a small vial from her bra. It showed her tapping a white powder into my favorite mug. The real Camilla gasped. She looked at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. She hadn't seen the camera. She thought she was alone. "Poison," I said, the word hanging in the air like smoke. "Attempted murder by poisoning. That is a special kind of evil, Camilla. It takes a cold heart to poison a man's tea and then smile as you hand it to him." On the screen, the digital Camilla stirred the tea. She added honey. She smiled that predatory smile I had seen earlier. "Drink it while it is hot," the speakers boomed. I paused the video on her smiling face. It was a grotesque image, a portrait of betrayal. "I didn't drink it," I reminded her. "But the jury won't care. They will see the intent. They will see the malice." Camilla scrambled to her knees. She crawled toward me, her expensive pants tearing on the floor. She reached out for my legs, but Thomas stepped forward, blocking her path with his massive boot. "Ike, listen to me," she begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her mascara, turning her into a weeping clown. I was confused. I was desperate. I didn't know what I was doing. It was the stress. I had a breakdown. A breakdown, I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You looked pretty focused to me. You looked like a woman with a plan, but I wasn't done." The worst was yet to come. The video that would seal her fate, not just in the eyes of the law, but in the eyes of God. I clicked the third file. This was the audio from the bedroom from just 20 minutes ago. The screen went black, but the waveform of the audio danced across the display green lines, spiking with every word. The voices filled the room. "What about the boy?" Jax's voice asked. Leo Camilla's voice answered, cold and dismissive. "If he wakes up, give him the juice. The one in the purple bottle." I saw the real Jax flinch. He looked at Camilla with a sudden flash of fear. He hadn't realized how bad this sounded until he heard it played back. "I am going to send him away." The recording continued. "There is a military school in Alabama, a cheap one, or maybe an orphanage." The room was silent except for the recording. Even Thomas and his men looked disgusted. They had families. They had children. Hearing a mother talk about discarding her son like trash was a sin that transcended the law. "I don't want to raise him." "The recorded," Camilla said. "I never did. Every time I look at him, I see Ike. I see that old black man's face. I want a fresh start, Jax. Not that." Click. I turned off the TV. The sudden silence was deafening. Camilla was frozen on the floor. She knew there was no coming back from that. She had insulted my race. She had rejected her child. She had revealed the black hole where her soul should have been. For a moment, nobody moved. The weight of her evil hung heavy in the air. Then Camilla moved. She didn't move toward me. She turned on Jax. It was a sudden, violent pivot of pure survival instinct. The rat was cornered, and she was going to eat her own kind to survive. "He made me do it," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Jax. She looked at me, her eyes wide and pleading, desperate to sell the lie. "Ike, you have to believe me. It was him. He threatened me. He said he owed money to the mob. He said if I didn't help him kill you, he would kill me and Leo." Jax's head snapped up. His jaw dropped. What he stammered. "He forced me." Camilla shrieked, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "He has been abusing me, Ike. For months. He terrorized me. That recording. I was just saying what he wanted to hear. I was trying to protect Leo. I was playing along so he wouldn't hurt us." She crawled toward me again, ignoring Thomas, ignoring the guns. "I am a victim, Ike. I am a battered woman. Look at him. Look at how big he is. How could I say no to him? He is a monster. She was good. I had to give her that. She was an actress to the bitter end. She was trying to rewrite history in real time, trying to paint herself as the damsel in distress instead of the mastermind." But Jax wasn't having it. The shock on his face turned to a red-hot fury. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the security team, his fists clenched. "You lying witch!" he roared. He lunged at her. "You came to me!" he screamed, spitting blood and saliva. "You came to the gym. You seduced me. You told me your husband was a boring old man who was taking too long to die." He grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her violently. Camilla screamed, scratching at his face, her nails digging furrows into his cheek. "Get off me!" she yelled. "Help me! He is going to kill me!" "It was your idea," Jax bellowed, shaking her like a rag doll. "You brought up the insurance. You told me about the pills. You gave me the key, Camilla. You gave me the damn key to the house." He slapped her. It wasn't a calculated strike. It was a flailing blow of pure rage. His hand connected with her cheek with a sickening crack. Camilla went sprawling across the floor, sliding on the polished wood. She scrambled back up, spitting hair out of her mouth, her eyes wild. "He is lying," she shrieked at me. "He is a gambling addict, Ike. He needed the money. He used me. He brainwashed me." "I did not," Jax shouted, moving toward her again. "You promised me the money. You said we would go to Rio. You said you hated him. You said you hated the kid." "I never said that," Camilla lied, her voice cracking. "I love my son. I love Leo. You were the one who wanted to hurt him. You called him that." Jax screamed, his voice tearing. "I heard you. We all heard you. You called him that." They collided in the center of the room, a tangle of limbs and accusations. They were clawing at each other, hitting each other, tearing at each other's clothes. It was primal and ugly. The veneer of civilization had been stripped away, leaving only two desperate animals fighting over the scraps of their failed plot. I stood there and watched. I didn't intervene. I didn't tell Thomas to stop them. This was part of the punishment. This was the breakdown. I wanted them to feel the hatred they had for each other. I wanted them to realize that their love affair was nothing but a mutual pact of greed. And when the money was gone, so was the loyalty. "Stop lying!" Camilla screamed, slapping Jax weakly. "Shut up!" Jax roared, shoving her back. They fell onto the floor, rolling over the Persian rug, knocking over a vase, smashing it to pieces. They were destroying my living room, but I didn't care. I could buy new furniture. I couldn't buy this kind of justice. Thomas looked at me, his eyebrow raised, asking a silent question. Should we stop this? I shook my head. Not yet. Let them burn. I watched as the people who had conspired to take my life tore each other apart. It was pathetic, it was tragic, and it was exactly what they deserved. Finally, when Jax had his hands around her throat and Camilla was gouging at his eyes, I nodded to Thomas. Enough, I said calmly. Thomas and 2 other guards stepped in. They moved with professional efficiency. One grabbed Jax and hauled him off, dragging him back. Another pulled Camilla up, restraining her arms behind her back. They stood there, panting, bleeding, clothes torn, staring at each other with pure, unadulterated hatred. "Look at you," I said, my voice cutting through their heavy breathing. I walked between them, looking from one to the other. "Romeo and Juliet," I said dryly, "although I think Shakespeare would have rewritten the ending if he had met you two." Ike, Camilla wheezed blood on her lip. "Please, he is crazy. You saw him attack me. That proves it." "It proves nothing, Camilla, except that there is no honor among thieves," I said. I looked at the screen where the video had frozen on her face, her lips mid-sentence condemning our son. "You tried to sell me out to a gunman," I said. "And now you are trying to sell him out to the police. You have no loyalty, Camilla. You have no heart. You are just a hollow shell looking for something to fill you up. But money can't fill a hole that big." I turned to Jax. "And you, son. You gambled, and you lost. You bet on the wrong horse. You thought because I was old I was weak. You thought you could walk into my house and take what I built." I stepped closer to him until I was inches from his face. "I have work boots older than you," I whispered. "I have survived recessions, strikes, and riots. Did you really think a gym rat with a bat could take me down?" Jax hung his head defeated. I walked back to the fireplace and picked up my glass of apple juice. I took a sip. "The show is over," I said. "The evidence is recorded, the confessions are taped, and the police are at the door." I pointed the remote at the TV and clicked it off. The screen went black, plunging the room back into the warm glow of the lamps. But the darkness in their hearts was still visible. "Get them out of my sight, Thomas," I said, turning my back on them. "I have to go check on my son." I heard the front door open. I heard the heavy tread of the real police officers entering the foyer. I heard the click of handcuffs. But I didn't look back. I walked toward the kitchen, toward the phone, to call Marcus's sister to check on Leo. The nightmare was over. But the cleanup was just beginning. The heavy oak front door swung open with a smooth, silent motion, revealing the chaos of the night outside. The driveway was awash in a sea of flashing blue and red lights that bounced off the white columns of the porch and illuminated the manicured hedges in stroboscopic bursts. Standing on the welcome mat was not a stranger but a man I had known for 30 years. Chief of Police David Miller. We had fished together on Lake Oconee. We had shared cigars at the birth of his grandson. Tonight he was not my fishing buddy. He was the arm of the law. He stood there in his full uniform, his face grim and set like stone. Behind him, a tactical team in heavy armor waited, their rifles lowered but ready. They looked like a wall of blue steel. Ike David said, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. "We got your call." Marcus sent over the files. I nodded, stepping aside. "Come on in, David," I said, my voice steady, though my knees felt like water. "The trash is ready for collection." David signaled with 2 fingers and the team moved past me. They flowed into the foyer like water, efficient and silent, their boots heavy on the marble. They swept into the living room where Thomas and his men were holding the prisoners. The transition of power was seamless. Thomas stepped back, raising his hand slightly to show he was a friendly. The police officers moved in. "Police, get down on the ground." The shout was redundant. Jax and Camilla were already on the floor, broken and exhausted from their fight. But the officers didn't take chances. 2 of them grabbed Jax, hauling him up only to slam him against the wall to frisk him. He didn't fight. He went limp, a sack of wet cement. All the bravado, all the steroid-fueled rage was gone. He was just a gambler who had lost his last chip. Camilla was a different story. Different. When the female officer grabbed her arm, she shrieked. It was a feral sound, the sound of a wild animal caught in a snare. "Get your hands off me," she screamed, twisting and kicking. "Do you know who I am? This is my house. I am the victim here. He kidnapped me." She pointed a shaking finger at me, her eyes wide and bloodshot. "Arrest him," she yelled. "He held us hostage. He has men with guns. David walked into the living room. He looked at Camilla with an expression of pure disgust. He didn't see a socialite. He didn't see a beauty queen. He saw a woman who had tried to murder his friend, Mrs. Jefferson. David said, his voice cutting through her hysterics. You have the right to remain silent, and I suggest you use it because every word you say is being recorded on my body camera. He nodded to the officer. Cuff her. The metallic click of the handcuffs ratcheting tight around her wrists was the sweetest sound I had heard all night. It was the sound of finality. It was the sound of the steel trap snapping shut. Camilla gasped as the cold metal bit into her skin. She looked down at her wrists as if she couldn't believe what was seeing. This wasn't supposed to happen to her. She was supposed to be the rich widow, not the prisoner. While they secured the suspects, a forensics team moved in. They were dressed in white jumpsuits carrying silver cases. I walked over to the breakfast nook and pointed to the corner. There, I said, the ficus tree. The lead technician walked over. He shone a high-intensity UV light onto the plant. The soil was still damp from where I had dumped the tea. But what was shocking was the plant itself. In the hour since I had poured the liquid, the leaves had started to curl. They were turning a sickly yellow-brown at the edges. The plant was dying. It was dying fast. The technician carefully took a sample of the soil and a sample of the leaves, placing them into sterile evidence bags. Whatever was in that cup was potent, he muttered, looking at me. It killed a tree in 60 minutes. It would have stopped your heart in 10. I looked at the dying plant. That should have been me. I should be the one curling up and turning gray. If not for Leo, if not for that whisper in the car, I would be a corpse cooling in the master bedroom. I felt a small hand slip into mine. I looked down. Leo was standing there. Marcus's sister had brought him back when the police secured the scene, just as I had asked. I didn't want him to see the violence, but I needed him to see the justice. I needed him to see that the monsters didn't win. He was wearing his pajamas, and his sneakers were untied. He looked at the police. He looked at the dying plant. Then he looked at his mother. Camilla was being marched toward the door by 2 officers. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were torn from her fight with Jax, and her mascara was running down her face in black tears. She looked broken. She stopped when she saw us. She saw me standing tall and alive, and she saw Leo holding my hand. For a second I thought I might see regret. I thought the mother in her might finally surface and she would apologize to the boy she had planned to throw away. But I was wrong. The evil went to the bone. She lunged toward us, straining against the handcuffs, her face twisting into a mask of pure venom. You little rat, she screamed at Leo. You told him, didn't you? You little spy. I should have sent you away years ago. Leo didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He didn't hide behind my leg. He stood his ground, gripping my hand tighter, his knuckles white. He looked at her with a clarity that was wise beyond his years. He saw her for what she was. Not a mother, not a protector, just a bad person who was finally going away. Goodbye, Mom. Leo said, his voice soft but steady. Camilla let out a howl of rage. You ungrateful brat, she shrieked. You are nothing. You are just like him. You are just a... The officer shoved her forward, cutting off her hate speech. That is enough. Ma'am, keep walking. She turned her rage on me. She twisted her head back, her eyes burning with hate. You think you won, Ike, she yelled as they dragged her out the door. You think you are so smart. You are just a lonely old man. You will die alone. You hear me. You will rot in this big empty house. I watched her go. I watched the woman I had married, the woman I had built this life for, being hauled out into the night like common trash. I am not alone, Camilla, I said quietly, though she was already out of earshot. I looked down at Leo. He was looking up at me. His eyes were dry. The fear was gone, replaced by a calm relief. Did they get the bad guys, Dad? He asked. Yes, son, I said, squeezing his hand. We got them all. We walked out onto the front porch. The cool night air hit my face, cleansing the smell of betrayal from my nostrils. The driveway was a theater of justice. The neighbors had come out. They were standing in their driveways in bathrobes and slippers watching the spectacle. They whispered and pointed as Jax was shoved into the back of one cruiser and Camilla was pushed into another. Jax was weeping, his head bowed. He looked small now, deflated without his arrogance. Camilla was still fighting. She was kicking the window of the police car, screaming at the glass. screaming at the world that had dared to deny her what she wanted. David walked up to us on the porch. He took off his hat and wiped his forehead. "We have the video files from Marcus," David said. "We have the confession on tape. We have the poisoned plant. And we have the text messages on her phone. She was texting him from the other room, Ike. It is open and shut. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. Breaking and entering. Fraud." He looked at me, his eyes sad. "She is going away for a long time, Ike. 20 years minimum. Probably life." I nodded. It didn't bring me joy. It didn't make me happy. It just felt necessary. Like cutting out a cancer. "Thanks, David," I said, shaking his hand. "Thanks for coming so fast. You saved your own life." "Ike," David said. "That trick with the recording, that was brilliant." "It wasn't me," I said, looking down at my son. "It was him. He saved me. He warned me. If he hadn't spoken up, I would be dead." David knelt down so he was eye level with Leo. "You are a hero, son," he said seriously. "You did a good job. You protected your dad." Leo nodded, solemn and proud. The police cars started to pull away one by one, their sirens chirping as they navigated the cul-de-sac. I watched the car holding Camilla turn the corner and disappear into the darkness. The red taillights faded away, taking with them 10 years of my life and the illusion of a happy marriage. But as the lights faded, the stars above seemed to shine brighter. The quiet returned to the street. The neighbors went back inside, their whispers fading. The show was over. I stood there on the steps of my empty house, holding the hand of the only person in the world who truly loved me. "Are you hungry?" Dad, Leo asked, breaking the silence. I realized I hadn't eaten in 24 hours. My stomach rumbled. "I am starving, Leo," I said. "Can we get pizza now?" he asked, hopeful. I laughed. A real deep belly laugh that felt like it was cracking the stone around my heart. "Yes, son," I said. "We can get all the pizza you want." We walked to the SUV. I didn't look back at the house. It was just wood and brick. It wasn't my home anymore. My home was right here, walking next to me in light-up sneakers. We were survivors. We were damaged. But we were free. And as I started the engine, I knew that for the first time in a long time, I was going to sleep with both eyes closed. Part 15. Financial Punishment 1. 200 words. The fluorescent lights of the police interrogation room hummed with a low, irritating buzz that sounded like a fly trapped in a jar. It was fitting, because that is exactly what Camilla was, a fly trapped in a jar of her own making. I sat on the other side of the metal table watching her through the one-way glass before I went in. She was slumped in the metal chair, her expensive coat ruined her hair, a bird's nest of tangles. She wasn't crying anymore. She was staring at the wall, calculating. Even now, in handcuffs, she was trying to find an angle. She was wondering how much she could get in a settlement if she pleaded insanity or coercion. I pushed the door open. Marcus walked in with me carrying his briefcase like a weapon. Camilla's head snapped up. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. "You," she spat, "you ruin everything." I sat down opposite her. I didn't say anything, I just placed my hands on the table. "I want my lawyer," she hissed. "I want a divorce. And I want half. I know my rights, Ike. California is a community property state. I get half the business, half the accounts, half the house. You can send me to jail, but I will be the richest inmate in the cell block." I looked at Marcus. He smiled. It was a cold, professional smile. "Mrs. Jefferson," Marcus said, opening his briefcase, "you seem to be under a few misapprehensions regarding your marital assets." "I want half," Camilla screamed, slamming her cuffed hands on the table. "I earned it. I put up with him for 10 years. I put up with his smell, his old man stories, his boring life. I earned every penny. You earned nothing," I said, my voice quiet but cutting through her noise like a razor. Marcus slid a document across the table. It was yellowed with age. The edges were soft. "Do you recognize this?" Camilla, Marcus asked. She looked at it. She sneered. "The prenup," she scoffed. "That old thing. I signed that 10 years ago. It is outdated. Any good lawyer can poke holes in that. It guarantees me $2 million for every 5 years of marriage. That is $4 million right there, plus alimony." "You didn't read it, did you?" I asked. "I read it," she lied. "No, you didn't," I said. "You counted the zeros. You saw the 2 million figure and your eyes glazed over. You were so eager to get the ring on your finger you didn't read Section 4, Paragraph C." Marcus turned the page. He pointed to a paragraph highlighted in yellow. The malice and infidelity clause, Marcus read aloud. In the event that the spouse creates a hostile environment, engages in extramarital affairs, or conspires to cause physical or financial harm to the principal party, all financial entitlements are forfeit. Camilla froze. Forfeit, Marcus repeated. That means zero. Nothing. No alimony, no lump sum, no house. You leave with what you came with. Which, according to my records, was a suitcase of knockoff designer clothes and a maxed-out credit card. Camilla's face went white. You added that, she stammered. That wasn't there. It was always there, I said. I put it there, Camilla. 10 years ago. Why, she whispered. You said you loved me. You said you trusted me. I loved you. I admitted feeling a ghost of the old pain, but I didn't trust you. I was a 65-year-old millionaire and you were a 25-year-old model who laughed too hard at my jokes. I built skyscrapers, Camilla. I know how to spot a structural weakness. I hoped I was wrong. For 10 years I prayed I was wrong, but I kept the insurance policy just in case. She stared at the paper as if it were a death sentence. $4 million, she murmured. Gone. But we are not done, Marcus said. Even if by some miracle a judge threw out the prenup, there is the matter of the assets themselves. He pulled out another file. A bank statement. Camilla looked up, hope flickering in her eyes again. A desperate, pathetic flame. The account, she said. The joint accounts. There is millions in there. Marcus slid the statement over. Balance $0. Camilla blinked. She looked closer. What is this, she asked. Where is the money? It is gone, I said. Gone where, she shrieked. You can't hide money. That is illegal. The courts will find it. I didn't hide it, I said, leaning forward. I gave it away. Her jaw dropped. You what? I put it in an irrevocable trust, I said. The Leo Jefferson Trust. Beneficiary Leo Jefferson. Trustee Marcus Thorne. I did it a month ago. I continued, enjoying the look of absolute horror dawning on her face. When you started acting cold. When you started taking those long phone calls in the bathroom. When I noticed the small withdrawals, I didn't know you were planning to kill me yet, but I knew you were planning something. So I moved the chess pieces. $50 million, Camilla. Every stock, every bond. The deeds to the commercial buildings, the lake house, even this house. It all belongs to Leo now. I am just the caretaker. I leaned back, crossing my arms. If you had killed me tonight, you would have inherited nothing. You killed for a zero balance. Camilla made a sound like a wounded animal. She slumped forward, her forehead hitting the metal table with a clang. She was sobbing dry, heaving sobs of pure greed denied. 50 million, she choked out. 50 million. But wait, Marcus said, his voice cheerful. There is more. Camilla didn't look up. She just shook her head. There is the matter of Mr. Miller's debt, Marcus said. Jack's. Camilla lifted her head. What about him? I don't care about him. Let them break his legs. Well, Marcus said, pulling out one last document. That might be a problem for you. He showed her a piece of paper. It was a loan guarantee, a promissory note to a shell company that was actually a front for the loan sharks Jax owed money to. Jax told us you were going to pay his debt, Marcus explained. He said you signed as a guarantor. I forged Ike's signature, Camilla said quickly, desperate to distance herself. I signed Ike's name. It is not my debt. It is his estate's debt. Marcus shook his head slowly. We had the handwriting experts look at this an hour ago, Marcus said. You see, Camilla, when people are rushed, when they are panicked, they revert to muscle memory. He pointed to the signature line. You started to sign, Isaiah, Marcus said, pointing to the shaky eye. But then you got distracted. Maybe Jax was yelling at you. Maybe you were in a hurry. You crossed it out and you signed Camilla Jefferson. I looked at the document. It was true. A messy scribbled signature, but undeniably hers. You personally guaranteed Jax's gambling debt, I said. $200,000. Plus the vigorous interest rates these gentlemen charge. Camilla stared at the paper. Her eyes rolled back in her head for a second, and I thought she was going to faint. I don't have $200,000, she whispered. I know, I said. And since you have no assets and no income, I imagine the collection agency will be very persistent. You have to help me, she begged, reaching across the table, her cuffed hands grasping at air. Ike, please, they will kill me. Those men will kill me. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. That sounds like a personal problem, Camilla, I said. Ike, she screamed as I turned to the door. I am the mother of your child. No, I said, stopping with my hand on the handle. You are the woman who wanted to send my child to an orphanage. You are the woman who called him that. You aren't a mother, you are just a defendant. I looked at Marcus. Are we done here? We are done, Marcus said, closing his briefcase. Ike, she wailed. Ike, please. Just a lawyer. Pay for a lawyer. You have a court-appointed attorney, I said. I hear they are very hard-working. I walked out of the room. The heavy steel door clanged shut behind me, cutting off her screams. I stood in the hallway and took a deep breath. The air in the police station smelled of coffee and floor wax, but to me it smelled like victory. I had stripped her of everything. The money, the future, the freedom, even the dignity. She was going to prison poor. She was going to spend the next 20 years thinking about that $5 million she almost had. Thinking about the signature that ruined her. It was a punishment worse than death for a woman like Camilla. I walked down the hallway to where David, the police chief, was waiting. Is it done? David asked. It is done, I said. And the boy? He asked. He is waiting in the car, I said. I walked out into the night. The stars were bright. I had lost a wife. But I had saved my fortune, and more importantly, I had saved my son. I got into the SUV. Leo was asleep in the back seat clutching his sketchbook. I looked at him in the rearview mirror. We are going to be okay, son, I whispered. We were broken spirit, maybe. But in every other way that mattered, we were the richest people in the world. I put the car in gear and drove away, leaving the ruins of my marriage in the rearview mirror. Age may bring wisdom, but blind love can invite destruction. I spent a lifetime building buildings, but I almost let a stranger tear down the foundation of my own home. The closest snakes are often the ones we let into our bed. My son, though small, saw the truth that my heart refused to acknowledge. Loyalty is not determined by a marriage certificate or sweet words, but by actions when no one is watching. In the end, I learned that a father's greatest asset isn't his wealth, but the trust and protection of his child. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There is so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.